tawa mai I ronga, te tawa mai I raro, te tawa mai I roto, te tawa mai I waho, kia tā I mai. Te moru tu te mori ora, ki te katoa. Homi e hui e tai ki e.
Timatanga, e hui hui e tākata. Nō reira e mihi atu. E koutou rā, Mark Christenson, e nā koe, e mihi atu, e ho, no mai, haru mai. E koutou rā, heri kiri hemete, nā mihi nui ki te tauhou o ki rā. Nō reira e mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Just a short translation for that one is that we just wanted to acknowledge the mana whenua of Ngāi Tuahuriri here. We also wanted to acknowledge the three presenters here and welcome you here to this table of Environment Canterbury. John Minto, also Mark Christenson and Colin Meurk. We do that under the mana actually of this place of mana whenua as well. And also thank the Councillor Robinson for our Karakia Timatanga, or our first Karakia of this meeting, the opening Karakia. And finally, you're probably ascertaining that I said Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous 2024. E mihi atu kia koe, e te kai whakahaere, e tūmaki tēnā orua, e mihi atu koutou rā, o ta māngai o te tepu, e mihi atu tēnā koutou, e mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Sure, thanks, Councillor Robinson, for your karakia, and thank you also for that. Councillor Parako, so welcome to the 570th meeting of the Canterbury Regional Council. We have a quorum, and I'm pleased to declare this meeting open. There's been a small change in order of business. Items 9.2 and 9.3 were taken after lunch break. They're the PX items. We have no apologies for absence today. Councillor Ward is online, and I think that, and Councillor Edge is online too. I can't actually see you online. I've got full screen, Councillor Edge, but yeah, you are there. Take it. There are no conflicts of interest, so we'll move to our public forum, and I'll ask you, John, if you'd come to the table. So John Minto, National Chair and representing Palestine Solidarity Network Aotearoa, is here today to talk about Environment Canterbury's procurement policy. And information has been provided to councillors in a handout. So I think you've been here before, John. You've got the button job, and you've got 10 minutes, and at 9 there's a bell and all that malarkey. So when you're ready, John.
Kia ora koutou, e mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you very much for the welcome, Meurk, and thanks very much, Peter, and the councillors for the opportunity to come and present today. And yeah, and an apology from me for not appearing last month when I was due to appear, due to being stuck in Wellington with the airport closed. And in fact, I was, just by coincidence, I was in Wellington yesterday afternoon at the airport when that storm came through, and they started cancelling flights. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to do it all again. Write another grovelling apology, but that didn't happen, and I'm here today. So it's really nice to be here, and I'm hoping that Environment Canterbury will be able to make a decision today. You've had the information for 3 months, and I hope people have sort of considered it. But I'll run through it just as quickly as I can, and then really keen to hear any questions or comments or proposals from yourselves in relation to it. This is an approach we're making to all local bodies in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I think we're a bit behind schedule in the sense that the events over the last 2 months have kind of have taken our attention elsewhere. But what we're proposing is that Environment Canterbury and local bodies around New Zealand look at the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334 and do their bit to support the development of peace based on justice in the Middle East. So what 2334 is, it's a resolution that was passed at the Security Council in late 2016. Bill English was Prime Minister, Murray McCully was our Minister of Foreign Affairs, and New Zealand was sitting on the Security Council. And I think with two other countries, New Zealand picked up and promoted this motion, which normally the United States would veto, but in this case they didn't. And the resolution went through with no votes against. And so it's become a kind of set a benchmark, I think, for the way we should look at the situation. So what it does is it says that the building of illegal settlements on Palestinian land, these are illegal Israeli settlements on Palestinian land, which has been going on for getting close to 30 years now, is a flagrant violation of international law. It has no legal validity, and the resolution calls on countries it calls on countries to differentiate in their dealings between illegal Israeli settlements on Palestinian land and Israel itself. Right? So that's what the resolution asks. And normally this would be picked up by the United Nations Security Council in a further resolution which would detail how that was to happen. But without that, it's been left to the United Nations Human Rights Council to pick this up. And so what the United Nations Human Rights Council has done is that they have identified initially 112 when they first put their notice, when they first put this proposal out. There were 112 companies which they identified as companies that were building or maintaining these illegal settlements. Creating barriers to peace in the Middle East. And they said that. So what the UN Security, United Nations Human Rights Council did, they produced this report, 112 companies when they first put it out, and now they're down to 97 with the list that came out in the middle of this year. So it is, what they're doing is having an impact. It's getting companies to withdraw their support for these settlements. And of course, the settlements, as I said before, are a huge obstacle to peace in the Middle East. So, and the initial reaction, I think, from most of you when you saw it is, well, this is an issue for the national government. That's where it should lie. And my argument is that no, it's for all governing bodies in New Zealand, because all governing bodies in New Zealand have their own procurement policies. And what the Foreign Affairs have said to us, and I detailed that in the at the front of the handout I sent around today. But what Foreign Affairs are saying, no, it's over to individual councils to make these decisions. The government will not intervene. It is over to councils to do that themselves, And if this was something, therefore, which was opposed to government policy or which was not in line with government policy, then Foreign Affairs would step in and they'd be very clear, as I've had experience of in the past, and they'll say, no, that's an issue for central government. But they're saying, no, this is an issue for local government to make a decision. And I hope you will today. So it's a proposal which, from the other side of the world is in one sense, it's a very small thing to do. And it's possibly a thing which would have no impact in particular on the goods and services which ECAN purchases. But it would send a strong message, I think, a really positive message around the world, around Aotearoa and around the world, that these things matter, that ordinary people and their local bodies and their central governments can make important decisions that will stand up for human rights, that will stand up for Palestinians who are facing the eradication of the possibility of a Palestinian state. And that their lives matter too. So the last thing I wanted to say was that I know that what I'm saying here, but we sent this out to you long before the October 7 attack on Israel, which was launched by Palestinian resistance groups. But it's inevitable that all of us are thinking about that right now, particularly with with what's happened in the last 2 months. So I'll make these brief comments on it from our organisation's point of view. Firstly, it's clear that there were war crimes that were committed on October the 7th, which involved the killing and taking of Israeli civilian hostages. And we condemn that, and we call for the International Criminal Court to be brought in to do that investigation, and the people responsible for those crimes be held to account. That can and should happen. It's happening in the case of Ukraine. There are arrest warrants that have been issued for people in the Russian establishment, crimes for them to answer to. We should do the same thing for what happened on October the 7th and what's happened since October the 7th, because there are war crimes, myriad war crimes that have been committed in Gaza, committed by Israel. You know, collective punishment, the withholding of food, fuel, water from a captive, trapped population, and then the bombing a densely populated area when you know that the majority of people who are killed are going to be civilians. And so far we have had, you know, the equivalent of all the children, 26 average-sized New Zealand primary schools being killed by the bombing which Israel has been conducting. We say that that is a war crime, and most of the world says that is a war crime as well. So we should condemn all the war crimes that have been committed over the past 2 months, and in a principled way, look at what the policies of Israel are doing to exacerbate the violence which we're seeing on our television screens each night. So I'd invite you to support this resolution. Kia ora.
Yeah, thank you, John. And just to note that we will table your document that you supplied. Just to let you know that we will table this document you supplied, and councillors are asked to they can ask questions of clarification of Mr. Minto regarding the procurement policy.
Kia ora, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John, for coming in here. Thanks to your supporters as well. I just would like some clarification. You talked at the start about peace based on justice. Can you briefly tell me what you mean by that?
Well, a peace based on justice.
Sorry, is this a clarification sort of the procurement policy?
Well, I was asking, he used the phrase peace based on justice, and I wanted just some clarification on what that phrase meant. Well, that's why I said, could it be narrow, please?
So I'll give just a very quick answer. You know, it's very clear we've got a situation of colonization in the Middle East. I mean, we had colonization around the world in many places, where one group's come in, built their numbers up, and taken over and pushed the indigenous people off their land. So a peace based on justice means that Palestinians have the right to either have their own separate state or to have equal rights within a single democratic state. And many people say that that second option is the only possibility now, but that's what justice would look like. Just as it did in South Africa, the case of South Africa, everybody has equal rights.
Hey, John. Becky?
But you mentioned a list of companies you said had gone from 100 and something down to 90 something. So that's something really specific that an organizer, maybe your organ or another organization, has gone and established specifically which companies we're talking about. And so that would make it a really simple process for our organization to know who not to get services from. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes, yeah, you are. It's the United Nations Human Rights Council that has compiled the list, right? So it's an official United Nations document. It's not something that I've dreamed up or some other people have dreamed up. And what you'll see if you go there is they specify what the companies are involved in, and they've invited the companies to engage with them and to have their names taken off if the information is inaccurate, that kind of thing. So it's now well established, and I think it's a very clear guideline for us to follow.
Have you provided that to us? Sorry, I can't remember if I've seen that.
No, I've just provided the link to it. the link to it is in the document. It comes up as a PDF file.
I actually have just tried to click on that link and it won't open for some reason. And I'm just wondering if anyone else can open it. I'd like to see the list myself.
I think you're well ahead of Mr. Minto asking him that question. He's got no check in front of him that he could. Yep, go.
I'm just wondering, has council or the organisation identified anything of question on the list that we need to be aware of?
Right. Are you another question?
I wanted to ask a question of the chair, if I'm allowed, in terms of so we've got a proposed wording for a resolution, and I'm just wondering, like, what's the next steps? Because I know we do have procurement that has taken, certainly some ethical aspects and sustainability aspects in our procurement policy, as I understand it, because we refreshed it relatively recently, and that was something that got discussed. And so if we want to put this draft resolution through and see how that fits, what's the process for that, and is that the response we'll be giving in terms of what the process is, or how does council go ahead with that? That's a question.
This is a generic response, essentially to people that make deputations to us, like John. And what it does, it says that we acknowledge that that's happened. We've tabled the document, and we will reply to John as soon as we can do that, in terms of the questions he's asked and discussion that's been held here today.
So it will be for councillors who may want to pick this up and take it through a separate process to this.
I think that's a process on its own. It's a process that sits outside what we're trying to achieve here today. This has provided the provision in terms of how we get back to Mr. Minto on this is provided by staff advice in terms of what we've done. If councillors see the opportunity to talk about this in a different way, or be informed in a different way, I think then that's up to councillors to bring it to a forum where that can happen. But no, I don't think it's the right place to put that before us today. Are you happy with that?
Yep, thank
you. Yeah, standing orders, you can't make a decision on a public forum, but you can do this stuff. So.
Yeah, I'm just a question too. So that potentially could be a notice of motion to the first council meeting in the new year.
Well, councillor, you are a councillor. Those council meetings are yours. I mean, you can bring those items before council. That's a purely democratic process that you have available to you. And if there's a feeling there to do that, if you think you've got the support within the room to do that, then you should. That's what you should do. I would encourage you to do it. Genevieve.
I'd like to move it, please. Yeah.
The only thing, councillors, the only thing we can deal with is what we've got in front of us here. All right. What you've been talking about is an entirely separate process that you will initiate yourself. Yes.
Kia ora, no, John. This is just a point of clarification. So what actually in the draft resolution here, what you're asking for is that it's around either blockades, the wrong word, sanctions against Israel's goods and services.
So no, it's not that. It's what we're suggesting here is that it's against companies. Some of the companies are Israeli companies, some of them are international companies that are involved in the illegal settlements. Right? So it's not a boycott of Israeli companies as such.
Okay, thank you for that point of clarification, because that's really clear now. Thank you.
All right. Is everyone else happy with this? It's in regard of our procurement policy supporting those people that do support the establishment of those things. So that's what this is about. So if I've got somebody here, you will move this, Greg. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Sunkel. Any further discussion on it? If there's no further discussion, I'll put that to you. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against?
Aye.
Are there any abstentions? So that's passed. Thank you, John, and thanks for coming in. This is a pretty big situation we have here, and thank you for the way you've conducted yourself in front of us today, and thank you, councillors, also. Okay, so we're going to move on now, and I would ask Mark to come forward from Banks Peninsula Pest Free, and Penny also. Welcome back, Penny. You never got an official acknowledgement in Nooks, but it's always nice to have you in the room. It's always interesting to hear your discussions. So, and again, 10 minutes. Bell will go at 9. Matters of clarification after that.
Aina mana, ina reo, roranga tirama, yain, tēnā koutou. Well, Mark Christenson, I'm the chair of the project oversight group of the Pest Free Banks Peninsula. I have with me Penny Canterbury, who you know is the chair of Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, which is the deliverer and coordinator of the Pest Free Banks Peninsula project. Penny's going to have some introductory words, and then I'll speak to this presentation very briefly.
Okay. Morena koutou. Lovely to be back here again. I thought what I'd do just very briefly, I spoke to you with Marie Burnett, the General Manager of Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, a couple of weeks ago. So I want to put what we talked to you about then in context of what Mark's going to talk to you about. When Marie and I came to talk to you, we talked about, I think, 4 things: the conservation covenanting work of the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, our support for the targeted biodiversity levy for the city. We talked about the MPI supported farm biodiversity project that the trust is facilitating. We've just appointed 2 new staff to that. And we talked to you about the trust facilitation of the Pest Free Banks Peninsula program. So I thought it might help to put what Mark's going to talk about in the context of the facilitation role of the trust. Sometimes it can be a bit confusing. So over to Mark.
Thanks, Penny. I think the first point I'd like to make is that we're talking about this concept of a towards pest-free Waitaha, and you see from the heading that it is not a new separate concept. It's really an extension of the existing pest-free Banks Peninsula idea and initiative. Just to remind you, we've got 14 original partners for pest-free Banks Peninsula. Environment Canterbury was one of those. And in terms of the governance of the Banks Peninsula Pest-Free Initiative, they have an oversight group, a project oversight group. Now, I chair that group, and we have elected members from the councils. We have appointed representatives from a number of agencies in the Department of Conservation and Ngāruranga and Tauranga. Just to remind you again, in terms of the work that's going on Pest Free, there are 2 types of initiatives. There's an elimination work, and that's removing animal pests. So there's the feral goats work, there's the possums and mustelids and rats work that's going on, particularly around the wild side and around Kaitariti. So that work is, as you know, part central government funded. There's matching funds, and the ECAN targeted rate for biodiversity across the peninsula has been a fundamental part of the success to date of that elimination work. There's also suppression work which is going on. That's not trying to eliminate the pests. It's recognising that that's an extremely difficult and expensive job over all of the peninsula. So it's looking at reducing the pest pressure. And there's a whole lot of work going on across the peninsula on things from the Port Hills predator-free work that's led by the Summit Road Society as part of the overall thing. There's work in Whakamutunga, Kaimahi for nature, but also Living Springs and other things like that. There's a mixed funding for those, that suppression work. All types of different funding comes, some from council, some from elsewhere. It's mainly community and landowner initiatives. And that's an example of some of the work that's going on in the the Port Hills, a huge number of people in their backyards and across reserves doing trapping, and that shows some of the records that's being developed. So one of the things that we're looking at now in terms of the strategy is that government funding for that elimination project is scheduled to end in March 2026. There are a number of additional things that would are required between now and 2026 in terms of maximising the efficiency of the work that's already going on. So one of the things, for example, is that come June next year, the central government funding for Kamahi for Nature and Jobs for Nature is finishing. So all of the work that's going on in the Whakamutunga harbour through conservation volunteers and others, that funding will finish, and we're looking as to how that additional funding is going to be, or how that work is going to be extended. There are a number of things that we can still do to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of the existing work. But at the same time, we recognise that there is a whole lot of work going on and a whole lot of interest right across the rest of the urban part of the city and right across, Canterbury as a whole, but particularly across Selwyn and Waimakariri districts. There's a whole lot of activities going on, groups already doing lots of work. One of the things that the Project Oversight Group recognises is that because there are limited resources, one of the important things is that we streamline and align all of those efforts so that we maximise the efficiency of the resourcing that we do have. And there's also a need to learn from and integrate with the Pest-Free Banks Peninsula. So there's a whole lot of lessons that Pest-Free Banks Peninsula has learned and is learning around community engagement and also landscape scale pest control that is useful for across the rest of the area, across the plains. So as I said, existing central government funding finishes in March 26, and we've had discussions with Petitions 2050 Limited, which is the funding central government around landscape scale pest control. Subject to funding being available, they're optimistic, and they're optimistic about that they say to us that they're looking at scaling up. Over the last 5 years or so, the country's done a lot of learning about landscape scale pest control, and now we're ready to move to the next sort of level. And so they've been saying to us that probably if subject to funding, what they will be looking at is extending the elimination project right across the peninsula, and even more optimistically, or in a good sense, looking at a much wider 500,000 hectare area, which we call central Canterbury, really from the Karakia up to the Ashley or thereabouts, the Whakamutunga or the Ashley, linking the peninsula with the Alps. So we're looking at how we might start to get what I call shovel ready for the funding that might come in that, and that's large scale, big funding. So how do we get ourselves in a position that we're ready? So what we've done is we've developed what we call a Towards Pest-Free Waitaha Charter, and that is simply a charter where focused on community groups that are already operating, but others that might want to start up in this wider area. To sign up to would simply be around let's start to work together. Modeled very much on what happened on Banks Peninsula, where those 14 agencies got together and said, let's start to work out how we're going to work together. We're now saying, let's do that across this wider area of all of the council areas. And that would be enable support and information sharing, also alignment and not reinventing the wheel, all of the various groups. We've got a paid activated position already in place, or to start in the new year. That's being paid for by the Predator-Free Trust nationally. And so we've done some initial thinking about how these sorts of things, how this project might roll out. Done some thinking about how the issues will be governed, to make sure it's aligned, which that's that slide here. So as I say, the BP targeted rate has been critical in supporting Pest-Free Banks Peninsula, and we see that extension of the targeted rate across the urban part of the city would be a critical next step in this towards pest-free Waitaha. And in terms of what we see as next steps, subject to funding, would be the continuation of this coordinated role, looking at how we engage more communications with communities, but also technical advice around how do we extend this elimination project across the 500,000 hectares, making sure that we integrate all of the biodiversity outcome monitoring, all the information sharing, and so that's all very much integrated. So that's a very brief snapshot of where we're at. We hope to be in the new year to be having an event where we establish this charter, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
So thank you. You snuck in, so that's good. So questions of either Penny or Mark on this? Oh, clarification, Joe.
Just with the northern boundary of this elimination zone, it's the northern boundary is Whakamutunga.
Shows it. Press the right hand side. That one shows it as the Whakamutunga, but it's probably the Ashley, so that would include the Whakamutunga district. We've had a few meetings, and we've got about 50 groups across those the three districts, including the city. We'll look this Prairie Foothills, Sticks, number along the South Shore, along the coast. Riccarton, well, not in the city, but Riccarton. We haven't come across anybody that's not interested.
To give it a context right there, yeah.
Kia ora kōrua, Mark, Penny, tēnā kōrua. Just following on from Joe, just I take it towards pest-free Waitaha steering group, that hasn't been formed yet. You're still kind of talking about those groups coming together for me.
We've started forming it, so we've established the terms of reference, and that's based on discussion we've had with the various groups and council representatives. So the chair of the steering group is Marie Gray, who's been at Summit Road Society, and we're just in the process of working through appointees to the steering committee. What we're really keen on getting is motivated community members to be on that group. It's not a governance group, it's an operational group, because the project oversight group for Pest-Free Banks Peninsula will provide that oversight governance role. So we're in the process of establishing the group.
So you've been in contact with groups like Te Karakia and other things like that?
Yes, they're front and centre of the discussions we've had today. Yes.
The last slide on funding, do you see these bullet points that you've got around what would be good to have? Is it that you would receive funding and then be getting Cont community engagement advice, for example, or technical planning from other organisations, agencies, consultancies, or is this a series of bullet points where you're actually looking for support from Environment Canterbury specifically? Is it, if you see what I mean, is it looking at the connections? So you're asking about the connections with us and our ability to support you in these things, or is it about the funding and then we may be part of these bullets but not the whole, if that makes sense?
What I've tried to do here is assuming that there is some funding available through an extended targeted rate across the city, what are some of the things that targeted rate might fund? Some of those things would need to be third-party deliverers, because there is no agency, there's no organisation as such, Pest-Free Waitaha, that like a legal organisation. So it might be that the council would need to do some things itself. So that's part of the discussion around what's the appropriate vehicle to deliver these things, and that's part of the discussion we have.
So it's really looking that's not understand the mechanism combination. Then others
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Firstly, can I apologise for my outburst? I was thinking out loud, given some of the work with the Ashley Rakahuri River Care Group, the Kohako, Tuaitara, etc., etc. So I acknowledge that there is a lot of work already gone in as far as almost a stock take. But my question would be, given the success, I guess, of Banks Peninsula, pest-free Banks Peninsula, do you believe that that is the reason the confidence around the predator-free 2050 are looking at that sort of landscape scale with your involvement?
It's a little bit difficult to answer in an objective sense, Councillor, because as chairs of the respective organisations, of course, that's the reason.
Supplementary, please. Yes, I probably should have worded that a lot better, but would it be fair to say that the work that you're doing has been applauded for the scale that you're actually operating at?
Yeah, look, thank you. I think that is fair to say. From what we are hearing from Predator-Free 2050 Limited, that they have significant confidence in the work that the Pest-Free Banks Peninsula team is doing and has done. And in fact, some of that work is nationally leading.
Kia ora koroa. Thanks for bringing this to us, and great work to try to consolidate things and extend. My question was just around, there's a note there around additional biodiversity outcome monitoring. Can anyone give some ideas about it?
This is a work in progress, Councillor. There's a range of biodiversity outcome monitoring done across different agencies. As one of the things that the Project Oversight Group is focusing on is how effective is that monitoring from a pest control perspective. I think there's a lot that could be done to improve and integrate the different works of the different agencies. So that's quite a technical question to look at. So sort of external advice would be quite useful on that.
Right, we'll make this the last question. Oh, thank you. Very impressive programs you're running, and just a question around your elimination programs. And I note that you are attempting to eliminate possums, mustelids, which I had to look up and see what it actually was, but hedgehogs and feral cats from Kaitariti. Great initiative. Is that a problem outside of the Kaitariti spit still, or have those sort of pests?
They're a problem everywhere, Councillor. So what we're realising through that extensive work on Kaitariti and on the wild side is how prevalent the some mustelids, stoats, ferrets and weasels are in the rats and the possums. But feral cats and hedgehogs are everywhere too. So they're causing a massive problem, not just on the peninsula, also nationally. But and so that's one of the things you'll notice, that we talk about pest-free rather than predator-free, which is the government term for the rats, possums, and the mustelids. We're looking at pests, which is all of animal pests, so feral cats, hedgehogs, but also feral goats, feral pigs, and potentially feral deer as well. So one of the issues is that it's quite a comprehensive, a detailed, convoluted ecological interaction between all these various pests, but they're everywhere.
All right. Oh, just a little bit of clarity. I mean, you've obviously established a program on Kaitariti, but as perhaps a manageable, achievable target. How achievable, or no, that's not the right word. What's the extent on the peninsula itself with these pests that you're eliminating on Kaitariti spit? Have you is it hugely enlarged problem on the peninsula, or something that longer term we can manage?
It's certainly manageable. So as well as Kaitariki, then there's the elimination project on the 30,000 hectare extended wildside area, which is the whole area behind to the east of Aotearoa. So there's a lot of learnings about how to eliminate in a larger scale. But one of the critical things as well is that having all of the work that's going on by communities to suppress animals makes a huge difference in two ways. One, when you get to the elimination work, it's easier because there's fewer of them. But secondly, it reduces the pressure on the eliminated area of infill. So if you create a vacuum by taking out the possums, what will happen is the possums will come in. So by all of the suppression work that's going on, you provide a buffer to the eliminated area. So it's a huge job, but the team understands how it can be rolled out over the course of the next 30 years or so.
Thank you. Look, and it's good that we're not talking about goats anymore because they're all gone. So that's, we did 2016, it was goats. So you're making a difference, and it really is a bit humbling actually. You see the amount of work you put in and the knowledge, the depth of knowledge people have and getting involved in this, and the capacity for people to want to go out and eliminate things, which is quite interesting. So thank you for coming in. Thank you for sharing that again. You're always welcome. And have I got someone, please, to move this on? Moved by Craig and seconded by Vicky. Any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, all those in favour, please say aye. All those against? And that's carried, so thank you very much, Mark and Penny. Yeah. And now we'll ask Colin to come forward. We will table your document also that you supplied, Mark. We'll table that document that you did supply. So you know the story here, Colin, the button and the time and all that, all that. And again, yeah, and again, this is a table document, elevator pitch.
Kia ora. Thank you for the opportunity to present here. And I honour Ngāi Tuariri as mana whenua, and I'm representing the dreams and elevated aspirations for our greater city and province, and wish to explore and discover those and share with you that I have with walkers, communities, audiences and local governments for decades. I keep getting asked back, so I guess that's some kind of endorsement. So you can see we've starting from a high standing. We've got recently announced 10th equal most desired city and province in the world to live in. Our universities are the most successful in the country. I'd like to see that we can build on this vibe. Some of you may have heard of Ralph McTell's The Streets of London. I'm not going to sing it to you, but it captures not only the despair, but the essence of revelation, hope, and opportunity to make better. We can show the world a transformative way forward. Your chair's recent comments resonated with me, demanding all governing parties more fairly invest in the Super South. The discrepancy between North and South seems set to continue, with only one minister from the South Island in the cabinet. We're going to have to make more noise, I believe, and so I'm wanting to kind of support you doing that. We have got plenty to recognise and value. We have got these greater than 11K capital city and province values. I like to think that where our city and our province is one of winter gold, with the amazing kowhai flowering as it is increasingly across the province. We have a spatial plan and strategy for connecting green dots, natural forest patches across the landscape, through corridors and through the halo effect providing stepping stones for our amazing wildlife to revisit and recolonize the region, and of course to interact with our people. And this is represented in the 140 green dots that Te Ara Kakariki has now established across the Selwyn district, and it's being replicated in other parts of the province. The Greening Waipara was another inspirational project incorporating walking biodiverse walkways and incorporating nature into the vineyard process. And of course, our urban and rural environments are crucial to establishing biodiversity, preserving our carbon in our soils, and also, of course, ensuring that we have environmentally sound public transport connecting all of our region. We have got a sponge city here. We're building on that, and other towns and landscapes can follow suit. We know about how to incorporate green intensification, and it doesn't have to be a scary thing. We can incorporate, courtyards which bring trees up into our office windows. We can have green roofs and living walls and incorporate sanctuaries on tops of our buildings. There's so much scope there. It's unfortunate how the rhetoric has often been about all the negative side effects of what we need to do to preserve our versatile soils around our cities and prevent urban sprawl. There's lots of opportunities for town, gown and country bringing together the expertise that exists in our great institutions of higher learning to build more sustainable technologies in transport, developing high-tech sailing ships to carry out long-distance travel and cargo, and also the basis and venue for long-term slow tourism, where it can be more relaxed, can be more about learning and understanding the local nature and the culture. Canterbury is likely to be the climate sweet spot, I suspect, and we're going to be overwhelmed probably by returning New Zealanders, but also refugees. So we need to be prepared for these, and we need to make sure that we stay sweet. We have lots of developing opportunities and assets to help make the province and region really inspiring. And the Christchurch 360 Trail, the first urban Great Walk, is a case in point. It's about a meaningful journey, which we're all on, a pilgrimage, a hikoi, Shinrin-yoku, sort of forest bathing, connecting people to our amazing nature, building placemaking, well-being and ecological literacy. There's business opportunities there, of course. There's the Ihutai Te Huangi Manu refuge area, and I honour Meurk Karakia as chair of the Ihutai Whenua Trust, that is mana whenua for one particular section of the trail, which is a highly screened and meditative and a beautiful part of the whole experience. The gardens city, of course, is vital for our biodiversity, and Putaringamotu, Riccarton Bush, represents the whole Aotearoa history. Sugarloaf Hills, fantastic panoramas. It's having guided hundreds of people around this walk over decades. It's about restoring the village and the joyful sort of transformational effect it has on people. There we have Craig speaking to his maonga. We have Weta crawling over rude climb past. We have Yumei from China under her ginkgo tree. All of these connections and stories are there. We need more eco-sanctuaries. There's a proposal for one in the red zone and incorporating Travers wetland, and we need more across the landscape. Banks Peninsula, we've heard about the wonderful efforts being made in Banks Peninsula. We need one out in the middle of the Selwyn district there as part of Te Ara Kakariki proposal. We need to recognise that all nature belongs everywhere, not just in the distant mountains, but it can be incorporated right in the middle of our city, a bit like Wellington Bush City on their waterfront. Why can't we have this in the middle of our city? And maybe this is sort of part of the conversation about a national park city, a Te Aotearoa or some similar thing. We have all of the credentials. Out in the country, we need to ensure we have linear corridors along our roadsides, along our railways, along our rivers, woods, hedges, walls, made up of increasingly indigenous species, protecting the vestiges, the last remnants that exist along those roadsides, not clearing them all away. These are food for our butterflies and for our birds. And they also feed our sense of place and identity. Our urban environments, don't clean away all of the, tidy up all of the nature that exists there. There was an amazing discovery just the other day of the black orchid in the middle picture there, in the campus of Canterbury University there. First time it's been recorded. There's lots of nature when you start opening your eyes and sharing it with people. It became quite a popular thing to talk about. The water races across the province are extremely important. They're heritage features. They were built over 100 years ago, and they incorporate a lot of our original nature, and they're often the most visible part of nature as you travel around. Making our biodiverse high country futures, making it more soft, a bit like, sort of strangely, the English countryside. Elevating ourselves to embrace our awesome skies. And I think Diana Shand, a former councillor who dreamed up this idea of Sky Song City, bring Waitaha above the radar again. So finally, that wasn't me. Okay, I've got a few sort of final summing up points here. I'm networked through the universities, ARA, Mana Whenua, CRIs, WA, NGOs, all the rest of it, and support your planning citizen and youth assemblies to co-design our future and make a world changing its mind, like Ralph McTell's Streets of London, How to Change Your Mind. We need to build that super south, all the local governments and Runaka of Te Waiponamu to take our demands for fairer treatment to Wellington, supporting Peter Ross's observation. For public transport, Amberley to Ashburton, head offices in the super south, bring all of those head offices. Why they keep moving up to Hamilton or Auckland? We should have them down here. Town, count and country, our progressive legacy, joint enterprise for applied technical innovations. Restore our creative music, art, theatre, festivals and concerts. The place to be, make this place a place to be, a national park city, Te Aotearoa, Christchurch 360 Trail, the Eco Sanctuary, Travers Aotearoa, the largest urban wetland, greening intensification, sponge cities to preserve our best land for regenerative agriculture and the circular economy for all, packaged and marketed for slow tourism. Preserve the natural water races, forest patches, etc., stepping stones from mountains to the sea. Let's do it together, all our resources to realise that potential, elevate, aspire and transform. So I'm here to develop, through the University of Canterbury, WEA, a Canterbury Centre for Creative Transitions to Sustainable Futures, a bit like the Koitua up in Auckland. And so what am I sort of asking for? Asking for continued acknowledgement and enjoyment and support for what we have, an endorsement of some of these propositions to aspire and seek your support, and being part of and me being part of this conversation and the implementation of some of these aspirations. Kia ora.
Thank you, Colin. Look, I think these ideas of yours are fantastic, and they just need to be keeping on an iterative process. We need to keep talking about them because there's so many there. And I know you've got some people in this room convinced when I can see farmers nodding about water races. So, I mean, there is some buy-in there. Greg.
Kia ora, thanks, Mr. Chair. Hey, before I ask a question and clarification, Colin, I just want to say thank you. You know, you're emotional, you're imaginative, you're inspiring, you're descriptive, most of all, you're parochial. And I just want to acknowledge your approach to connecting people to the natural world. So that, first and foremost, from me and many, many people, thank you on that. I just want to take it a wee bit further. So given the, what's it like with your engagement, for example, with the likes of Christchurch City Council and the surrounding TAs? Could you give us a wee brief bit on what you've been talking to us about?
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, these messages have been shared with many audiences, including the city councils and other local governments around the country, for that matter, and lots of community organisations and NGOs and U3As and service communities. So it's been out there, and maybe my fault, if you like, has been lack of strategizing and actually grasping all of that support, which is kind of like sits there passively, but they don't then sort of all kind of write letters to the council and say, yeah, we've got to do that.
Just a great presentation, and your vision for the future is fantastic. I just wonder whether there's one change you could make. And that is, you had a girl sitting on a plastic chair down by the beach. She should have been lying on a woolen rug.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Colin. Yeah, I knew you are all across so many different things, and there's so much potential in all of this stuff, and there are things changing. But I'm wondering, is there something specific that you would like to see, or that you think could be that switch that would enable this to progress in a much more certain line? Or is it simply that there's so much there that it is an iterative process and it sort of, you know, forms by chance and we're moving progressively in a direction?
I think it is too big to fit into 10 minutes, so it's about an ongoing conversation. The last sort of final statement there about a Centre for Creative Transitions to Sustainable Futures is about bringing together all of the partners in this room and Mana Whenua, but our centres of higher learning. And I'm associated with University of Canterbury and Lincoln University, and I'm having conversations within those organisations to help build an aspirational and inspirational centres of learning that provide a pathway forward for the future. I mean, the world is facing numerous existential crises. We've heard about some of them, and we've heard about some solutions this morning from other presenters. We need to bring all of these ideas together and also be very attractive to the global student movement who are coming here now to spread those ideas out across the world. And we need to be a model, here, this region, this council, can be one of the models which we use as a demonstration of how to achieve that better future.
Yeah, just one statement. I think the thing that and you've written it here, the one thing that I saw that got most people excited, that I've seen get excited for a very long time, was the notion of the national park city. Somehow grab a hold of that narrative and push that forward. All of this other stuff would actually fall in under that. I think it really is a good soundbite that can drive a lot of the stuff behind it. But the other thing I was wondering is that big impenetrable fortress called Christchurch NZ. Have you ever been in touch with them and talked about this as a narrative that they can start adopting through some of their workings and other things like that? Because I think that would be a logical step potentially.
Yeah, I'm very conscious of how the National Park City, which derives from London, which is about turning a convention on its head and embracing nature. but I'm also conscious of the colonial kind of connotations it has. And, so that needs a conversation with mana whenua to come up with an appropriate name for it. But it has an international recognition. So, it's a balancing act between those. And the Bay of Plenty have created a national park region using a local Māori name for that. Now, what was the other question about the, sorry? Oh, yeah. So I have had conversations with them in the past. We've got so much here to promote and to celebrate and to showcase. I often feel that we underplay ourselves. And so that's why I kind of use that metaphor of the radar. Let's elevate ourselves and let's, tell the world our story, because I think it's amazing. And, when I take people around the 360 trail and show them all of those things, people say, I've lived in Christchurch all my life. I never knew we had so much richness here. And this is very emotive. And so my emotion, comes from that feedback that I get from the people of this place.
Thank you, Vicky, and then Nook, and I think we'll end with Nook.
Yeah, just in terms of the funding side of things. So, do you see that this is, so for example, having a really clear vision around, say, a national park type of structure, and that so things can fall in behind and be more strategically progressed? Is there a lack of funding, or is funding an issue, or is it more just needing to get aligned and have the conversations and set some structure up?
Yeah, I guess we need to keep food on the table. I keep forgetting about that side of things. Keep forgetting to send the invoices out. Yeah, look, some of what I would do would be sort of just joining people together, like at the universities, having those conversations. I haven't really sort of delved into that. What resources we might need other than the human resources and the good support from people. But yeah, I'll come back to that sometime. Maybe I should put together a budget.
Kia ora, Colin. Mihi kia koe. Can I first of all say thank you, as many have here, around your elevated pitch for Waitaha Canterbury. I just want to go back to the late Raki here, Hinare Tau, and how he described you as a tolka, or a treasure for our environment. And I just think that what you've been talking about, and the analogy that's always that has been used, is around the taio, like the parks and all of that, are the lungs of the city. The rivers and the streams are the arteries and the veins, and if they're not all working, well, then nothing else works. And then how you cloak it, how you dress it, and all of that. But I think that thinking about a name for all of this, I think Raki here was also very cognizant of the fact that it needed to be a tangata tiriti name as well as a tangata whenua or mana whenua name as well. So a combination of the two languages, which actually would reflect with that. So good to you, Colin. Nice to see you again, and well done.
Thank you. We'll put the recommendation up, and then I just want to make a little statement afterwards. So we'll get this out of the road. So it's moved by Joe and seconded by Genevieve. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. Now, in the new year, we get back here, I think, the 29th of January, Colin, and we haven't probably got a heap of stuff to do on the 29th of January. Can we contact you about seeing some of these things? Like, can we catch up with you on the 1st of February as the councils that want to do that, and have a look around some of this stuff so that we understand it better? I mean, I certainly would like to that, and leave an open invitation, and maybe we can coordinate it, or Craig and Vicky and others who know you better can coordinate with that. We had 4 or 5 things we could do. That'd be really, really great. Give us a better understanding. So thank you for coming in.
Yeah, we could do the 360 trail walk then together.
No, it's like, that's energy required for that. I was thinking is something we drive around in and see, you know. Okay, thanks, councillors. That's been a pretty good session. It's gone on a bit, but that was pretty interesting. Thanks, Peninsula is always interesting, and also Colin's always interesting. So, given that opportunity to do those things with us. So, if we can move to 7.1 now, which is, sorry, deputations, there are none. Item 5, extraordinary urgent business, there is nothing. Item 6, notices of motion, there are no notices of motion. So 7 is the minutes of unconfirmed minutes of 22nd November. Are there any matters of accuracy that councillors want to bring before us? Jenny.
It's just a typo. It's 4.1.3. They've spelled healthy incorrectly without the Y. It's not much, but makes me twitchy.
Good. I just want to go to point number, where is it? I think it's 38 or 39, engagement significance and Māori participation. I thought that we had also included Ngā Hau Whā Marae in that as well, but obviously it's not in the minute or whatever. But I just want to make the point is that when we are talking about you know, the marae actually within this in the city, Ngā Hau Whā National Marae, the marae of the Four Winds, is actually paramount there as well. And so I just want to make that point, please. Thank you.
Okay, how do we want to handle that? Traya, do we just note that in this meeting?
We can take that.
Right, we've got the recommendation up there that we confirm the minutes from the council meeting held on 22nd November 2023 as amended. Someone move those, please. Thank you, Genevieve, and seconded by Claire. All those in favour, please say aye. Those again. Carried. So 8.1 is the council resolution status report. Traya is here to talk to that if we need Traya. Councillors, anything in there that they want to speak about? Noting that the standing orders, actually that's yellow, will be talked about next, I think. The urban waterways one, we had some discussion about the fact that in the new year, and maybe even part of this clarification, being sort on whose ultimate responsibility that they were and those sorts of things, and was provided by Tim, and we'll also be talking to Stephanie about that. And there is some explanation around that, so that's a work in progress, and we'll sign that off hopefully in the new year again. There's it's a bit of a desire of councillors to get to understand that better. And then the river rating options, I think, is still a work in progress. All right, so someone, if everyone's happy with that, is someone move that? So moved by Councillor Pauling, seconded by Councillor Robinson. You're very active today, Genevieve. Any further discussion? There's no further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. David, I think we'll get you 8.2, David, standing orders. I think we'll get you to come to the table, and in our documents that we have here, the two versions of standing orders, which is the version that we're dealing with now, is detail first in the document, and then the highlighted changes that are noted are in that document. And I understand that there are some other amendments to be made, David, but I'll just get you to introduce this.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ngā kaunihira, kia koe te tiamana, ngā mihi kia koutou. Thank you, Chair. And yes, this brings forward an update to Council standing orders. The current standing orders are a carry forward from the previous council. Since that time, we have had an updated template from Local Government New Zealand, which provides a basis for this updated standing orders document. In doing so, we bring forward all of the bespoke
elements of the current standing orders that makes it unique to this council. They've been carried forward into the template. Then we've also taken into account over the time of this current standing orders, there's been various matters that have arisen that have triggered need for clarification, which both the governance team and general counsel have had sort of on their books. So we've taken the opportunity to feed those through together with feedback and clarity that councillors have sought with regard to this new draft set of standing orders. And also through reviewing it, we've tried to recognise the custom or the tikanga of council in the way in which you operate, because the standing orders are effectively a representation of the norms that you collectively like to work to. So that's really what we've then brought forward, because we're juggling between two sets of documents. We've tried to make it easy through having one set that has those the amended areas highlighted, which is that version, and then a clean copy. Because of the time around this, we've received some further feedback through Deputy Chair Pauling, which we've worked on the basis that those changes, which are relatively minor in nature, that you'd be happy to accommodate those. So we have updated the recommendation, which includes those changes, and we've had it pointed out by Councillor Davies that in the Local Government Act, the ability for minor amendment actually isn't permitted, because any amendment to standing orders requires 75% majority, and so we have removed recommendation 4 on that basis. So those resolutions are with Oliver, but happy to leave it there and answer any questions.
Yeah, so the updated, which our document shows those ones that we worked on with myself, Craig, or more importantly, Craig, Dion, Joe, and also Grant, and John was there as part of this. And then there are some changes that will need to be signed off here, which are further adjustments, if you like. And I think now's the opportunity, and I think you might have some too, but now's the opportunity, Craig. Did you want to ask a question? Okay.
Edit. Where would I add that? Okay, so point 23.6, which is one that you've added in. It says form, and it should be from. On page 109, a chairperson, when moving the adoption of a recommendation, form a committee or subcommittee. It should be a recommendation from a committee or subcommittee, as I understand it.
That's noted. Thank you. Now, can I just ask, before we go to you, Craig, can I just ask Councillor Davies, did you have something in addition to this?
It's all come through an email from Oliver, so I'm quite happy.
Just seeking clarification. Can you bring that stuff up? Because the staff sounds like they've updated their recommendations, so just keen to.
Sorry, just to clarify, this is not an updated recommendation. This is a.
Let's go. Cool, that's just what I heard. Yeah, no, I'm keen to put this amendment. First of all, I'd say there's lots of really good new additions to the standing orders that have been put to us. including new definitions, the inclusion of committee members in the voting systems, recording and live streaming, clarification, casting vote or not a casting vote for the chair, and the new Appendix 13, which assists the chair with helping to remove members and members of the public if that gets out of control, as well as the work we've done on 20.11. So yeah, there's lots of really good stuff in there. And these three things are just three things that we didn't really get enough time to understand what they or how they could be solved. So I just wanted to put this to the table, to the council. And the first one is around 4.3 and language. And I just felt that it could be a whole lot more simple than what it had been put, and just to take out that requirement for things to be translated, because I feel like that can create an impediment. But there's still some control in there, because if members are going to use te reo or sign language without providing the translation, they must advise the chair, and it aligns with 17.1, which is what the public, when they present petitions, are asked to do. The second one is about the reasons we can terminate or refuse a public forum or deputation, and the word just having criticising in there, I felt wasn't really right, because I was always taught at university in particular to be critical and to apply critical thinking to things. And if you look at the definition of criticising, it's not entirely bad, but I think the words unduly criticising help the intent of that order, and it's used elsewhere in the standing order. So I think it's 20. Sorry, I just got to find my notes. It's used in 21.10, the word unduly criticising, and when you do that, it makes it a lot clearer. Yep.
So I speak in support of this, because if you're reasonable and if you're chairing a meeting, there was always an opportunity to advise people that they're heading down that, like, and the second time to advise them, and then the third time to say, look, you are undue. This is undue criticism. So I agree with that. It makes it really quite simple, and it gives some flexibility also.
And the third one is about the electronic devices at meetings. And again, it's just to make it a bit simpler. And the recognition of all the councillors that worked on this was, they're a part of the way we work these days. And we wanted to add things in there about being able to record, because as happened in a committee meeting last week, a member was making a speech and that wanted to be recorded, and that happened, and there was no problems with it. So that's a positive thing. And we put the main thing in here, we've put a control in around the chairperson being able to ask for that device to be switched off for reasons that have been laid out, which is good. But what it had in there is another control in there, which I don't think is necessary, because it's already got a control. And so we asked for that to be taken out. So that's the rationale for that. And I think the last one is Councillor Davies proposed things around the Canterbury Regional Council just being referred to. Obviously, now we've added Councillor Mackay's thing about the form and from. And yeah, that's up on the screen.
Can I say that, so that last piece that Craig was speaking about, 20.11, the electronic devices using at meeting, the intention is that we will be beaming to the world in the new year sometime. And David, I know you were starting to do a bit of work on that. The issue that we have with obvious people waving cameras around is the unintended consequence of staff being involved in there who have got no willingness to be involved in that. So if we do get once we get ourselves sorted out, we can actually partition that stuff off. And councillors have different views on this, but my view is that if staff members feel that they don't want to be on someone's social media, well, that's fair, So I think this is a good way of doing that, and we just hopefully that we can get get the stuff in here that we're required to actually give some purpose to what some of the councils have been asking for. Now, sorry, I was just going to ask that, Joey. So you're going to move this, and second by Joey. Now, is there any discussion around this, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know in our conversation upstairs last week, there's
I guess the collateral of staff being caught in a wider kind of recording of members speaking. And from my perspective, staff are staff and they're operating and they work in a public environment. And I don't have any difficulty with that, and I don't believe staff should, but I would not expect to have the camera at the chief executive or an officer making a presentation. So I just sort of draw a distinction between someone being in the room as part of their job or someone being recorded and highlighted. And I think that's something that we should be able to manage. Just that's my view of where we kind of sit.
I think that can be the code of conduct, which comes along later, could help give some guidance in there. That's what
Not need to move the substantive first.
Can't hear anything.
Sorry, it's just a bit of process around moving the substantive motion and then adding the other one to it. And moved by Dion, seconded by Ian. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks very much for that. So that's the amendment's been moved. The amendment's been moved by Councillor Pauling, and are we doing the right thing here? And seconded by Councillor Davies. Okay, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
So that becomes part of the substantive motion now, moved by, I can't see. Did you move that, Joe? Swigs. Moved by Swigs, seconded by Cranwell. So, everyone happy? All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. And thank you, thanks Grant, and thanks for your assistance there, Dion. That was great. 8.3, the regional public transport plan is here, and it's you, Lee. Got the real expert in the room with Len here.
Kia ora koutou, Len Flex from the public transport team. Just briefly, this is largely a procedural paper. ECAN's approached both the Greater Christchurch Partnership and the Regional Transport Committee to assist with the development of the Regional Public Transport Plan, and particularly to run the submissions and hearings processes. Regional Transport Committee has agreed to convene a hearings panel for this purpose of considering submissions on the broader Canterbury components of the proposed plan. As the Regional Transport Committee is established by ECAN under the Land Transport Management Act, Council should formally appoint the hearing panel and adopt the terms of reference, which are the substantive recommendations in items 4 and 5 in the paper. So if that being the case, someone welcome questions.
Okay, question from Councillor Swigs.
Yeah, so just so I'm very clear in my mind, this is really related to the public transport aspects of the line plan or whatever it is. It's the public transport part, isn't it?
This is the Regional Public Transport Plan. So Council had asked both Greater Christchurch and Regional Transport Committee to oversee the development of that plan.
Thank you, because I just wanted to get that very clear in my brain to lead on to the next question about the makeup of these. My apologies, I've lost my space. The makeup of the people who you're suggesting on there may have. Right, anyway, they're there anyway. Why were those people chosen over people who have public transport within their area? So I just wanted to understand this decision making that's made this. Yeah,
it's the Greater Christchurch Partnership, made up of Selwyn, Waimakariri and Christchurch City and Environment Canterbury and Whakakitahi. They've nominated a separate panel, but because the Greater Christchurch Partnership is in a committee of this council, we're only dealing with the Regional Transport Committee, which is a committee of this council. Regional Transport Committee are doing the broader Canterbury elements, and Regional Transport Committee have selected the Mayor Black, Brown and Bowen and Chair Scott as their representatives to do the outside Greater Christchurch part. So that'll be the Timaroos, anything that in Ashburton, Kaikoura, if Kaikoura have a proposal or wish to have an involvement.
Councillor Twiggs, just for your information, public transport also involves community cards and total mobility services, which we do provide across the region. And that's the regional coverage on that. And then there's the emerging issues of those TAs who wish to get involved in public transport. Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. I think the on page 238 of the agenda with the maps there, what may have helped councillors in just kind of understanding that would have those boundaries only include the edge of Selwyn and Waimakariri. So if there had been like another map that had boosted out the whole of the region, it might have been clearer that the GCP are just doing Greater Christchurch, and then obviously the mayors from the RTC are doing broader. But thank you for the report. I think it's a great report. It's clear, and I feel like I understand how this is moving forward.
Vicky, I know you were looking for clarification. Have you got clarification, enough clarification?
I think what I'd be interested. So there will be a draft regional public transport plan created in its entirety that will go out for a consultation process that will go across the region, and then the hearings processes of both the bit that goes outside of the Greater Christchurch Partnership and the Greater will be sort of running concurrently. And so there's a mechanism because the risk would be that you end up with sort of like things that don't actually tie in together, but the process you've set up and the timelines you've set up will avoid that risk.
That is the aim, but yeah, the process is run, both hearings panel run as close together as we can, so that Greater Christchurch Partnership deal with the Greater Christchurch components, so they want a bid term swim in their own swim lane, and the broader Canterbury through the RTC hearings committee deal with the rest.
There is some overlap. So for example, the total mobility, for example, will occur in both of those. So is there a mechanism to bring the two hearings groups together and make sure that there is a smooth, or if there's any question mark around some different approaches or different?
If there is any question mark, Environment Canterbury has the final say on adopting the plan. So you folk are the final, I guess, you have the veto if you're comparing it to the Security Council.
And my understanding, Len, is that we're going to try and have the same chair for both groups. Is that right?
Both groups have been set up, and they've got different components, but effectively the whatever happens in either group ultimately comes to ECAN.
Thank you, Grant.
Thanks, Chair. Len, just a question for me on the resolution number 6. You mentioned that the Greater Christchurch Partnership has identified members of the hearings panel. Have set up the hearings panel for the GCP. But I'm wondering, would it be useful having the names that have already of the appointees attached to item 6 for clarification? For example, Councillor Vicky Southworth is the Environment Canterbury representative on that hearings panel.
Exactly, we could do that. From memory, it's Councillor Southworth, Mayor Gordon, Mayor Broughton, and Councillor Temple.
Yes.
We can note that, Grant.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
We can minute note it rather than recommendation note it.
Yes.
Note it in the minutes. Yeah, we'll note it in the minutes that has been brought to you, and that's what we'll do. But anyway, I agree with Councillor Burns. It is pretty straightforward paper. it's good to get that clarification in terms of what those roles are. And obviously there are some overlap, but it will come back here. So, and we'll be reasonably close to it. So we'll put that recommendation, noting what Councillor Edge has said in the minutes, and put that recommendation up there. I'm not going to read that. Moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Uncle. Robinson. All those. Any further discussion on this issue?
Thanks for the clarification on that. And actually, it was about the third time I read it to actually understand the outside the box or outside the lines. But yeah, but if it takes me 3 times to understand that, I feel sorry for the people in our communities who might not be as engaged as we are. And I think we need to find a way to do this better around GCP and all that, to actually communicate what's going on to our communities. So that's a little bit of a thing. I think we just need to be better about GCP, what it's doing, how it's communicating to the public, because it does feel like a black box that sits out there that makes a whole lot of good decisions or big decisions and then filters through committees over committees over committees. So I do think we can do it better, but thanks for the explanation about how it's now I kind of understand it, which is great.
Yeah, thanks, Link. Noted, Councillor Swift. Okay, I'll put that to you. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. So thank you. So we're moving to 8.4, which is pretty much just a procedural item to set up that committee, the emergency committee for the break period. I'm not too sure if we need to have a lot of discussion about that. We'll put the motion up and moved by Councillor Cranmore, seconded by Councillor Pauling. You didn't? Oh, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Any discussion on that matter? If there's no discussion, I'll put that to you. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. 8.5 is the updated council committee schedule 2024, and the only one that really understands it's draft, actually. Well, what we'll do is we'll just give you to have. I mean, we've got people wanting to move and second it now, so there's not too much problem with it. But if you want to have a wee discussion about why this has happened.
Just for visibility of the councillors, just letting you know that we have been working with the auditors and are having to make a couple of changes to get in alignment with when they're able to do things. So we have now got an updated staff recommendation where point 2 is now going to remain as it was, and point 1 is where we're adding in those extra ones. So we've got a council meeting on Wednesday the 28th and a council meeting on Wednesday the 26th.
Magic. Right. It is what it is, people. So it's been moved by Councillor Davies, seconded by Councillor Crocker. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, and that's carried. Thank you. So 8.6, Alex, is just walked in. Timing's everything, Alex. Excuse me. The Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy funding issue, and I'll hand over to you.
I'll just provide a brief update to this paper and some of the history and thinking behind it, and then throw it open to you for questions. So at your most recent meeting of the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee, you received a paper on the principles and processes for revitalising the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy, particularly in light of the new National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. The committee agreed to those principles for guiding Environment Canterbury's involvement in that revitalisation process, as well as a series of next steps. Included a stakeholder discovery session to be scheduled in March and April of 2024 in the first half of next year. The next steps for the strategy revitalisation proposed in that paper did not require additional funding and could be delivered within existing budgets. The most significant next steps for the revitalisation process relate to the partnership and engagement considerations. The Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy itself is a collaborative document owned by all of the signatories and the Waitaha region, and it's not Environment Canterbury alone that dictates what needs to happen in that space. Part of its success and importance is due to the collaborative approach employed in the development, and achieving that involvement is a social process which can take time. A strategy with collective regional support will underpin long-term regional biodiversity benefits. And we did not think that we needed additional funding to begin those engagement processes in the first part of next year. Work on the revitalisation has occurred in this financial year, albeit at a reduced degree as we waited for that NPS to land, and will continue into the remainder of this financial year. That said, any process for revitalising the CBS will still have to abide by the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity requirements for collaborative development, including with tangata whenua to the extent they wish to be involved. After the BMB, your Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee, agreed to the next steps, the committee added a new resolution in session, seeking to accelerate the revitalisation by releasing up to $200,000 of reserve funding. As the committee was unable to approve that unbudgeted expenditure, the recommendation that you see before you today in the report has been put to council. So that's pretty much my brief summary. I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Okay, so is there any clarification on this issue from Alex?
Yeah, I've got quite a few questions actually, if that's all right. So I just want to clarify, because this is probably looks terrible being the chair of the Biodiversity Biosecurity Committee, but I'm really confused and I find this report a little contradictory and confusing. So I want to go back to the reason. First question is, how long has the strategy been in, or how many years has the strategy been in annual plans to be revitalised, please?
It was inserted in the last long-term plan with a few milestones along the way.
And it was undertaken to sort of start a process, but decided that because the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity was coming, it would be better to hold off. Is that correct?
In generally speaking, yes, there was a few reasons for the delay, and they've been communicated through to the last iteration of this council and this one. Yeah.
Kia ora, okay. So it wasn't until August in a discussion at our regular meetings that members of the chair and deputy were told that it was no longer in this year's current work plan. Is that correct?
It remained in the work plan, but didn't have funding for this year.
Well, that's where I'm confused. So it doesn't have funding for this year, but we don't need any funding to do anything.
So the goods and services funding is the funding that we're referring to here. So there was $200 and something thousand allocated in goods and services that we identified during, especially given the delays to that NPS, wouldn't be a prudent use of funding to carry on with that process at the time being. That said, internal work and staff time has still been going towards the development and revitalisation. So that's the work that's gone on. It hasn't been used. The goods and services funding allocated hasn't been used or required to date.
Can I ask a question about on page 348, paragraphs 14 and 15? It talks about, if approved, directing the 200,000 of unbudgeted expenditure from general reserves, and that it could be used for funding a consultant to coordinate and manage the revitalisation process. Can you give me a little bit more detail on that, please?
As we didn't have any funding set aside in our current current year's work program, we were sort of scrounged around to think about some things that we might be able to deploy additional funding to at the moment if it was allocated as part of this process. So those were some of their early ideas. They would need a bit of refining. I still think that if you brought a consultant in to manage that process under the parameters of the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity, they'd still, I don't think that they would be able to materially increase the speed in which that work gets done, just because they would have to consider the same engagement and partnership considerations that anyone else developing that work would.
Thank you. So my question on the consultant type thing, have you actually made any approach to any of the potential likely characters that may in fact have the cognizance of engagement?
I'm afraid I don't understand the second half of your question now.
The second part of 15A sentence says, however, a consultant would need to be cognizant of the engagement considerations mentioned in the report.
By that, I mean that those partnership and engagement steps that need to be met, both in terms of engaging with tangata whenua to the extent that they wish to be involved, and working with the remaining signatories within who are part of the CBS, would still be considerations for any person doing that work, be they internal or external.
I've just got two more. I know I'm taking a bit of time. Sorry. So I took it upon myself, whether rightly or wrong, to contact one of the Mahanui Kurataia, who suggested that this sort of work is their bread and butter as far as consultation about working with documents, and thought it would sidle quite nicely in with the RPS work that they're already contracted to do with the council. Are they likely to be cognizant of the engagement considerations?
Any third-party service provider that we would get on to help deliver this work would need to meet whatever terms that we propose as part of their request for proposal. I can't speak to the individual ones that you might have talked to, sorry.
And I appreciate that, and I did put you on the spot with that one, but I got one last question. So do we need any money to expedite this project, which has been languishing for some years now, or do we not?
To deliver the next steps that you agreed to in our biodiversity and biosecurity meeting, I do not believe we need additional funding at this time. But I do condition that on the fact that there is additional funding set aside in the coming long-term planning phase, which those goods and services funding, there is a plan to deliver some of that work as we get there.
Thanks, Alex.
So I just ask you, then Councillor Burns, given that answer, where do you sit with this?
Sorry. Yeah, I'll wait till you debate. Thank you.
Sorry. Next, we've got yeah. So it's Grant actually. So can we go to him first? Yeah, Grant.
Thanks, Alex. I've got two questions. Firstly, you say that no money is required to deliver a draft or engage with people. Are you suggesting that that the money that you're saying is available is only available from July, or is there money available from February through to the end of June to get moving on this project?
We have the funding available to deliver the next steps that the committee agreed to in that B&B report, but that won't mean that you get a revitalised draft by May. I think those partnership and engagement considerations will take some time, and it's important to remember again that we're just one signatory to this document, and to continue working in that way with everyone, it will require all of those people and groups and to come together to agree on what sort of process and involvement they want to be part of.
It didn't really answer my question. Is there facilities at the moment and finance to engage with Ngāi Tahu and engage with our partners and stakeholders
yes,
between February and the end of June?
yes, in accordance with the next steps that were in the original paper, yes, we have the funding to deliver those.
And are you, and that's been programmed in to start from the 1st of February?
So it's on my team's work planning and agenda to begin that work. So we will be responsible, for example, for setting up that stakeholder discovery session and getting in touch with all of our signatories and stakeholders to run that session in the sort of first, towards the end of the first quarter next year.
As from the 1st of February?
Well, I mean,
you will begin to engage and set that up at the 1st of February?
Councillor, I think he has answered your question.
It's a bit vague, Chair. I'm wanting to clarify the time frame.
I don't know what's vague about yes.
I think even before the 1st of February, I'm sitting on some correspondence that we could potentially send out to signatories now, but had been waiting for the outcome of this deliberation. So my intent is to get in touch and begin that engagement process as soon as possible. But obviously, there's some unknowns with how this particular meeting was going to go ahead. So we're ready to go now, talk to our stakeholders and signatories this side of Christmas, and begin working with them to identify who amongst those organisations are the appropriate people to be involved, and then work with them to figure out the nature and extent of their involvement in the revitalisation.
Okay, that sounds good. Just second question. On page 249, item 20, suggests that if we wish to accelerate this, which is really where I'm coming from, that Environment Canterbury would need to take full ownership of the strategy. It suggests that there would be a reduced degree of collaboration. I'm not so sure on that, but is that possible that Environment Canterbury actually takes the lead and full ownership of that, and works with and collaborates with partners and other stakeholders?
Whatever approach is taken, you will, well, at least for the time being, need to be cognizant of the engagement and partnership considerations contained within the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. My advice is that will still take some time. The point in there about a significant change in approach would ultimately mean that a regional biodiversity strategy becomes Environment Canterbury's and loses out on all of that co-signatory and co-development opportunity, which I believe is quite an important part of the biodiversity strategy's success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Kia ora. Hey, thanks, Alex. Yeah, it appears to me that I get now that we have money in the current annual plan till next June to do the engagement stuff and to work that stuff out, which I think is totally important. And again, like you said, under the NPS IB is in there. Nothing's changed in that regard, in my opinion, and you won't lose that collaboration. But what has changed is that the NPS IB now makes it a regional strategy, is now statutory, which wasn't in 2008 and the previous work we've done. So hence, it's clear to everybody, and this was at the Biodiversity Champions meeting, which you were at too, that it is Environment Canterbury's job to lead this. That's what I think, and that's what's changed significantly, I think. And therefore, I think that one of the issues is that we don't have the capacity, because we don't have that goods and services money, to get on with the writing part of it. The engagement part, cool, we've got that in hand, we've got a plan for that, we agreed to that at the committee, I get that. It's the acceleration of the writing part, because it's a bit chicken and egg. You know, you can go to people and engage on what? Or you can go to people and engage with something in hand to say, and we've done a bit of work. And I think that's where the confusion is for me, because I am confused as well, because we're not seeing enough of that. And so that's really my question. Under our current plan that we agreed to, so the engagement part, what would be delivered by next June? You know, what is it that we're going to see from that engagement process? Because that's where my concern is.
All right, I might start by not quite answering one of your questions, a question that you didn't even ask perhaps, but I don't read the NPS to preclude us from delivering a revitalised strategy in the same way in which it was developed. While Environment Canterbury can take the leadership approach in funding and providing resourcing to deliver that under the NPS, which we have done, I still think it can be a collaboratively designed process in the same way that it was last time round. So, and I guess that's the space for engagement that I'm trying to make available, so that Environment Canterbury isn't dictating the terms of the NPS, of the regional biodiversity strategy to its signatories and stakeholders, but that everybody is part of that collaborative design process. So, and I guess that's back to Councillor Edge's point before about, well, what might be the consequences of shifting that parameter a little bit away from the collaborative and co-design space back into a world where Environment Canterbury is dictating more about what's in there. So I guess that is a decision that maybe this council or the B&B committee itself could make in future about how we want to go ahead. But the leading assumption for the time being is that we would still like to work with the people that are involved in that biodiversity strategy to deliver a collaborative co-design approach. I don't think if we take that approach, I could answer the question you've got about what might be delivered, because the involvement for each of those signatories and stakeholders might well dictate the timeline from which they're able to participate in that process. So, but based on what we know about the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy still largely being fit for purpose, I don't think that the redevelopment or revitalisation of it would take a huge amount of time. But that's sort of creating a bit of a rod for my own back if in case that perhaps it does. So.
Thanks, Alex. And look, I'm not suggesting that we would ever not do it in a collaborative fashion. We would never not do that. You know, that's 2023. You know, we've got a good track record of doing that in the past in 2008, but now we do have a statutory responsibility to get on with it. That's sort of my point. And I know there is timeframes in the NPS that push that out, but a lot has happened. A lot has happened since 2008, and we need to catch up. And my push is for the work to be done to inform the engagement, and that's what I'm trying to get clarity on, because I don't understand that we've got the capacity to do that strategy thinking technical piece to inform the engagement, or otherwise I'm afraid that by next June all we would have had was a bunch of meetings, and I'm not happy with that. That's why I'm pushing for this bit of extra resource to get the strategy and technical work up to speed, so that by next June we are ready to go, and that's inform the engagement process with those partners. Because I think that there's reputation on the line here if we show up to those meetings and we don't have that technical strategy work and information to inform the process. That's my issue. So that's why I want to, you know, I do support getting the goods and services money to accelerate, because I'm not convinced, and from the answers so far, so unless you can convince me otherwise, that in the next 6 months, we've got that capacity to do that technical engagement, technical strategy thinking work to inform engagement. That's what I really want to know. Have we got that? Are we going to deliver that alongside the engagement or not? Or are we just going to have a bunch of meetings about talking about the process? Because that's easy to do, in my opinion. That's how you inform that process. That's the key thing. So I don't know if you can answer that, but that's what I need an answer to help the decision.
So I'm just wondering that we've got two things to do here, and I'm thinking that we're going to pull the pin on this very soon and then come back with it, because I think it's going to go on a bit. That's my, because we're just still getting clarification from you on your paper. I think, with all due respect, Councillor Pauling, I think we're getting into capacity issues in terms of staff and the ability to do work. Have we got the people? Those are sorts of questions that it seems like you're starting to uncover. And I'm not 100% sure if this young man should be answering those. That's my thing about that. But anyway, I'm going to adjourn us, and you're going to come back at 1 o'clock. No. We'll carry on with this item at 1 o'clock, and then we'll do our PX stuff after that. Right, I think this is too important to rush this last 10-15 minutes of this. It's going to throw our day out anyway, so that's my final sort of decision on that. So yeah, so thank you. We're adjourned until 1. as it's now 1 o'clock, we said we'd start again at 1, so we will. The process that we're in at the moment is still on questions of clarification from Alex. Craig, you're happy enough where you ended up, or did you have anything more?
Oh, I'd like my question answered. That's probably the main thing. That's what I like, but I'm happy for other people to ask questions if that can't be answered right now, but I'll probably come back to it.
Just for so my clarity in terms of what you've just said is that what you're asking for, is there the capacity to push this on harder in terms of the what's required under the MPS Indigenous Biodiversity, MPSIB?
My question that goes to the crux of the recommendation that came out of the last biodiversity biosecurity meeting, because it's about money to help the process. And what we also agreed to at that meeting was the process part of it, about the engagement, which when none of us are debating, that has to happen. So it's not that. And my thinking is this, that you can go to an engagement process open-minded and open book. That's sort of the phrase, open book, and that's good. But in this case, for this strategy, that's not the best way forward, because we've got a strategy from 2008 that a lot of us think is really good, but a lot has happened in the biodiversity space since 2008, and we have the MPSIB that's come in more recently. So, for example, some of the work that needs to, in my opinion, that would need to happen is it's the technical science work to inform what has changed since 2008 from that previous strategy till now. What have people in the region done? What have we done well? What could we do better? There's also strategy and policy work on district councils have done biodiversity strategies. Team, we're out consulting on one now. How are we going to incorporate that into our regional strategy? Who's going to do that strategy and analysis work? And so my question to the team is, do we have that capacity to do that, to help run alongside the engagement process which we agreed to? Because my theory is you can show up with an empty plate, or you can show up with a partially some food. You bring some food to the potluck eventually, rather than none. And I think that's the question I'm asking, because I think that the space we're in, and my conversations or conversations at the Biodiversity Champions work, it's not as if
okay, so I think it's not that we've done no sort of technical or other work, and I think we flagged in the earlier B&B paper some of the work that had been undertaken already. So assessing the provisions of the National Policy Statement against the CBS, the work that we've done, understanding the different sorts of incentives and actions that the biodiversity strategy and the signatories could be thinking about and promoting in the future space. I think I also mentioned in the report that's in front of this council that one of the things that might be possible to do is to allocate that additional funding, if it's agreed to some of that science and technical work, because you're correct, we probably don't have that funding. That said, I haven't turned my mind exactly to what additional that might be required in that text. So that's just because I haven't sort of talked to our stakeholders and signatories about it and haven't had the funding sitting there to be thinking about. So I would also hate to set the expectation for this council that doing that will materially improve the timeline that we've proposed, which still has those sort of like contingencies on, like it might be valuable, useful, awesome information for us to use as technical practitioners and strategy advisors and otherwise. But I would hate to say, yes, you release that funding to do that bit of the work and say, yeah, well, that will absolutely march the timeline ahead. It may not do that, but it may be valuable information to support the process. I'd probably have to go away and think about what that might be. And I know that Catherine's had a chat to some of our science team in the interim, so maybe you'd like to jump in with some additional context.
I was just talking to Tim in the break, and we would need to contract that out and get someone in additional to help us. So yeah.
Yeah, and it sort of goes back to the matter that's on the table about what it is we, in that recommendation that we saw. Now, we said draft. Now, in our minds, a draft means a draft, some content. Whereas, you know, you guys might think that's a draft for public consultation. Well, that's not what we were thinking. We were thinking we want content to inform the engagement process, and we want content so we've got something tangible to know we've achieved by next year. So that wording might not be quite right, but as long as we agree, they understand what we mean. And, you know, the words like issues and options papers, or that's what we sort of mean. We want some content to inform engagement, bringing together science work and policy analysis to inform and help us. So that's what we want by May next year, not a full draft for consultation. We understand that's way too tough. But yeah, and you're saying, yes, some extra funding for science work would be helpful. That's good. That sort of answers my question.
There's a couple of things here. One is that we need to understand whether the money does help do that. And the other thing is that you probably should think about, well, the way the recommendation is written as a clarification around what you're asking for, I think, between now and then. But let's get through the rest of these questions. We've got Genevieve, Dion, Vicky, and then Claire, and then Ian.
I feel like my questions aren't really relevant since the break. However, I agree with Craig and what he's saying. We just need to swiftly advance whatever we need to get this over the line. And we're only talking about up to a certain amount. We're not, we're not putting it in concrete. It's allocating a certain amount up to a certain amount, for the outcomes we need. And sort of like my feeling is with the delay in the coastal work and considering it's in the appendix that it's may be included, I would really hope that by appropriating that money, it would be included to some extent of the key issues we're facing in the situation without a current updated coastal plan. So in that situation, I would really push for this. Thank you.
Yeah, firstly, I just wanted to say thank you, Alex, for I think it's probably is the only time I've ever sat around a table and that had somebody at the end of that table say we don't need extra money. I'm delighted to hear it because it does give me confidence that you and your teams are going through these budgets and are saying exactly what you need to do and how much money you need to do X, Y, Z. And you've kind of explained to us that the resolution that we signed and that we agreed to in that last meeting, you can do within the existing budget. So, I just wanted to say thank you for that. And just in terms of the questions around the budget or the extra money, I'm not sure you can answer this, but somebody might be able to answer this. There isn't very much detail around the reserves in the paper. So I just wanted to get a little bit of extra financial context around the status of the reserves at the moment, and do we have a reserves policy about can we pick money out of the reserves whenever we feel like it, or is there a specific policy around this? Does this meet that criteria? Those kind of questions are what I want to ask, and I'm not sure you might be able to answer that. I'm sorry.
I did try to include that broader context in this paper, but didn't have enough time, I'm afraid. But someone who is perhaps more across the broader state of our finances could jump in.
So there is a council policy on reserves in terms of the level at which they should be kept. Many of the reserves are below that current level. That's why in previous annual plans, this council committed to trying to replenish those reserves up to an acceptable level. We do provide information to the AFRC and the financial information on the status of reserves and where they are, and that information has also been provided to council as part of the preparations of the draft LTP document that's currently being considered. We are currently also working on the 6+6 forecast, which will include a re-forecast position about where the reserves will be. I can certainly expedite that information and provide it to councillors as soon as it's available.
So, I mean, the thing that I want to really nail here for my own mind is we're asking to take money from reserves. Do we have a policy around being what what is okay to be taken from reserves, or are we just going to be picking out random things at any one time that we sort of want to do in reserves? I don't know who can answer that question, but I think it's really important for me to understand that.
Obviously, as was discussed, I think at the Biosecurity Committee, there was no approval in the annual plan for the expenditure, and it doesn't have the authority to, on the delegated authority to make that decision. Certainly, you can commit to spending additional money out of reserves. Clearly, myself as having overall financial responsibility at the executive level would give you advice on whether that put you in an unsustainable financial position. I don't believe the amount that was discussed would have put you in that position, and that's why we didn't raise any objections in that committee. I think that as we've previously provided in relation to public transport, where we have made, or this council has made several decisions to fund activity this year from reserves, we have tried to provide that overview of why that money is needed, how it reflects the current state of the reserves and the impact of either deciding to fund from reserves or the decision not to fund from reserves. And so I would encourage a more holistic view to be taken of decisions to remove money from reserves rather than taking an ad hoc individual case by case approach.
Can I just, when would be the appropriate time to have that conversation? Is that in the long-term plan? Or is there another time to do that? Or is that actually AFRC?
So we can either bring a paper to the next AFRC, which is on 21st of February, or to a council meeting setting out the current position of reserves in more detail. I'm happy to provide it to either committee, depending on what is requested.
To me. Craig's asked some of the questions that I was, or has commented on some of it where I'm thinking we're not in a vacuum, where we haven't been in conversation with the people that we will be going back out to engage with. And so, it feels to me like we could bring some information at this point in time and start a conversation a bit ahead of where you might if you went out cold. I know in the last biodiversity meeting, I asked a question about the RPS and the importance of our biodiversity strategy in relation to the RPS. The RPS is continuing at this point anyway in quite a rapid pace. And I think you said you didn't quite lose sleep over the sort of what potentially is a bit of a misalignment. Might like to have got the biodiversity strategy all done and dusted and ready to be then fed into the RPS. Often these planning things don't all line up in a nice uniform or nice way that you prefer if you could start from scratch. So in what I'm reading and understanding and through this conversation, it seems to me that there is the potential to do some additional work that would help to inform, albeit we might not bring the data at which we'd actually notify a biodiversity strategy, but nevertheless, there's an opportunity with some additional funds to do some further work that would help to build some knowledge, build some information, get some better science and data. Would that, one, is that correct? Am I right in understanding that? And secondly, would that also help the RPS and help to remove that slight concern, which I think you suggested you perhaps had, I certainly have, in terms of that RPS work that we're also doing?
Again, I'm going to start answering your question by not answering your question. And I think there's actually some really interesting biodiversity work and information being gathered as part of that RPS process already. So and what springs to the front of my mind is the work that we're doing with the Eco Index group. They've recently released their national Indigenous vegetation target maps. There's been some refined work done for the Canterbury region. So it's already, some of that information gathering is already occurring as part of that process. And then to actually just respond to your question, yes, it's absolutely possible to do more of that sort of work. But as I mentioned earlier, I don't know exactly in my mind at the moment what that would be. So I can't sit here and say to you as councillors, thank you for this funding to deliver more information about biodiversity. We would expect to get a report that tells us X, Y, Z, because I just haven't, and the team hasn't done that thinking yet, but I'm sure something is possible, but I wouldn't know exactly what at the moment.
So I suppose the question then is, if we approve this funding, does it give you extra impetus to go and find out those things and to actually look at it and go, what would be beneficial, and what aspects of the work we're doing, potentially in addition to the biodiversity strategy, would this be beneficial to? Or would you go and do that bit of work and thinking, anyway, if we don't approve this?
On the current timeline that we talked about in the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee meeting, and on the proviso that I've mentioned already about there being money, at least to the best of my knowledge at the moment, in each of the 10 years of the current LTP to support this work, there was a plan, I suppose, to utilise some of that funding in future years to identify those gaps, probably on the basis of what our stakeholders and signatories might have indicated was important information for them to encourage their involvement. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what a work program might look like on the fly, which is probably not helpful. So I might, yeah.
Definitely needs a bit more thinking, Alex, and we shouldn't put you under that amount of pressure. So we'll go now to Ian, and then.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Alex, on the 8th of November, when we had the biodiversity biosecurity meeting, and the papers attached here is particularly page 2259, and where you laid out some thinking that the staff have done around what the consistency or not between the proposed or the NPS IB and our current biodiversity strategy. There's been obviously the change of government and a little bit of time relapsed in there. Has there been any direction, or are you getting a sense of any changes that would impact what you've already considered here during that time?
Always something coming. I will say that it is a lot easier to carry on a work program in a world where some of the requirements in national direction are removed rather than added in the middle of the process, which is kind of why some of the frustrating delays that we've had at the moment have materialised. I would be less concerned about the NPS or parts of the NPS going away than I have been about them arriving. And I think, if nothing else, it provides us, whether it's in force or not in the future, with some really contemporary good information about what the roles, responsibilities, requirements and expectations are for regional councils in the management of Indigenous biodiversity. So whether it's a document in force or not, it's still a useful resource to inform the revitalisation process.
I'll come back and make comment when we come to that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Alex, just to go through all your questions and answers you've already been through, to try to sum it up, and I've got a question at the end, is you said we can't speed up the process. Giles has said the reserves policy needs some structure around how we take money out of a non-existing pot, and that doesn't appear to be the case in this example. You don't need any more money for the agreed process you're already in. And Craig and Vicky have discussed then adding to the process you're already in to try to get some more information. Your answer to that is you'd have to think about what you need to do and whether in fact there's any value in that, though instinctively you think there may be some options around that. So my question then is, if that was the preferred line of path of moving forward on this, how much money do you need? Because it seems to me that we're now debating the issue that we're debating, the recommendation we're debating is no longer got much support from you or from anybody else. Now we're trying to figure out whether, in fact, if you throw some money at an alternative pathway, you might be able to come up with some useful additions to the process we're already in. So have you got a view as to how much money you'd need for that? In short, no. Yeah.
It's interesting to
Mr. Chairman, I'll reserve my thoughts to comments. I have no questions. We've got Alex under pressure, so I will reserve for comment.
So councillors, just so you're aware, staff have provided the feedback based on what previous councils approved. The work plan that they have has been based on previous approvals. Staff follow the direction that is given at that time. And what you've heard today in terms of the responses are absolutely fair and spot on. Anything further would be requiring quite a lot of staff time and work to deliver. And hence I am making this comment. I think we have provided you with full information based on what was approved already, and the staff are delivering on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alex. I mean, I think you've been really good actually in terms of your answer. So thank you for that. And thank you, Catherine. You can step back and we'll open this up. I think we've heard a range of opinions on this, and I think the last comment from Stephanie to me is the one that we need to consider in terms of doing this. I'm not shying away from any recommendation that you might want to put in front of us, but it is the capacity and consistent with the staff advice that we have in front of us, and actually what are we going to achieve. So that's what I think. But comment, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to ask a question while doing this. So from I concur with some of the thoughts of Councillor Swiggs, Councillor McKenzie, in that we are now trying to rewrite what we want to achieve, given that staff have provided us with advice that the funding is not required. And if I go back to the very opening comments, any change of the recommendation would need to go back to the Biodiversity Committee to make a change, and yet we're here debating a reorganisation and a rethinking of what money could be spent on, which is, I think, even more challenging than changing a date. So that extended use, we do not have the reserves. It is unbudgeted expenditure, and it appears to be a want, not a need. As the Chief Executive and Alex have put out, we have a work plan and process. We will achieve the outcomes as they are. So the recommendation I could not support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. Grant, your comment now.
I was going to move this when you're ready, Chair.
Right. Any other comment from others? Yeah.
We're discussing first before it's moved. Okay. Look, I similarly can't support this one. I mean, this is.
Sorry. The reason we're doing it like this is because we'll foreshadow that there may be amendment to that. Maybe we should go to that first. Yeah, mover and seconder. So we've got Grant. We'll take you as moving that. We've got a seconder for this. I think Greg. So got a mover and a second. Now discussion around that. Councillor McKay. Sorry about that.
Who's go? He's the mover.
What is please do? Councillor Edge.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I've moved this because I moved it at the biosecurity meeting. Out of frustration of lack of movement on the development of the biodiversity strategy. You know, in our long-term plan 21 to 31, in the biodiversity portfolio, the biodiversity strategy was the top thing to be done. It was outlined as a key document, a key regional document, a key regional strategy. And we were supposed to, from that year, 2021, to revitalise the strategy, ensuring it identifies regional priorities and the roles of all partners and stakeholders. And in 2021, we were supposed to have established a partner and stakeholder group to scope and commence the Canterbury Biodiversity Revitalisation. That has still not happened. And we're now in 2023 and we're talking about getting this underway in 2024. The level of service, 13.2, talked about working with Ngāi Tahu and seeking input on those priorities and preferred roles and implementation. 2021, we still haven't done that. You know, this is a reputational issue, and all we're asking for is $200,000 to enable the biodiversity team to perhaps even address those items indicated in 15A and 15B of this report, employing a coordinator, getting somebody stuck into it. The original biodiversity strategy in 2008 had an independent facilitator to coordinate engagement with a whole range of people and seek views and then help that facilitate that. And I'm not convinced that additional money would not help that process. You know, you know, in terms of the money from the reserves, that is possible. We've just heard from Giles that it's not a major significant amount of money. We seem to have found the money of about 1.5 million for transport because of reputational issues. We seem to have found about $3 million to deal with consents. And for this biodiversity, which is supposed to have been, I think it was 2018, 2019, a step change in the way we viewed biodiversity. Now we continue seeing it as some kind of portfolio that is able to be cut up a wee bit and not giving it its true focus. It was really disappointing that in this annual plan, where some items were being cut out, that it wasn't made clear that the biodiversity strategy was actually one of those things being cut. And I think even the wording was a little bit different too. It was saying that it was going to be a reduced spending, but at no stage did it say it was going to be this bad. And look, I appreciate staff have been doing a lot of work. There's a lot of things going on. We just need to get on with it. And I think that the impetus of this is February to June. If it's not February to May, would be really, really good to get moving on that. And especially getting other people interested in contributing to the discussion. That's all I've got to say at the moment, and I might just say something at the end.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Burns.
I sort of concur literally everything that Grant's just said. I want to go back to when the strategy was signed off. Councillor Ross Little, a very good North Canterbury councillor at the time, said, while not a panacea for all issues and problems related to biodiversity, it provides a framework and priorities for protecting our ecosystems so that we can enjoy the environmental, cultural, social and economic benefits for years to come. Councillor Jane Demeter at the time noted that the strategy reflects the importance that our community places on maintaining Canterbury ecosystems. Earlier this year, we had an unfortunate quote by our own chair in the press that terrestrial biodiversity is fundamentally not our role. People in Canterbury see the name Environment Canterbury and presume we have something to do with the environment. The biodiversity strategy, obviously with the changes now that we have a national policy statement for Indigenous biodiversity, does require us to take ownership of this particular document. My concern around where we're heading at the moment is literally what Grant has said. We are now looking at a number of years and we haven't even got to the point where we have opened the document, folded out the front page, looked at all the signatories and bothered to call them or email them or text them or have a cup of tea with them and say that we're thinking about doing this. We haven't even done that after years. So I am supporting money being put into this, and I believe that we will need external help to progress this. I do believe there is an appetite within our Papatipurunanga to progress this, and I think it's inherent upon us to make sure that we do this. The Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee has, among its terms of reference, strategy, both developing, reviewing, and this, along with the regional biosecurity pest plan are the two most important ones that the committee has. So yeah, that's all I've really got to say. I could go on, but it really says nothing other than that.
Councillor Edge said a few moments ago that this is a reputational issue. I agree with him, but for a slightly different course. We're facing the prospect of a significant rate rise, and the reputational of this organisation is under scrutiny, trying to keep that down. And staff have recommended that there's no need for the use of reserves to achieve the current program. I find it particularly fiscally irresponsible to be literally finding ways to spend extra money when we are in a period where we have significant pressures on our LTP and other financial matters going forward. So I'm certainly not going to support this, particularly in face of a staff recommendation that we can achieve the biodiversity program that we have currently approved without the use of reserves. So I will not be supporting the course.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The mover and seconder, Councillors Edge and Burns, have talked about the importance of renewing the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy. That's not up for debate in this motion. The motion is about whether we throw another $200,000 at it and whether that'll make any difference. And we've heard very clearly from our staff it won't make any difference. There is a suggestion there may be some other, so if some funding went into a different part of the process, we may be able to provide some valuable information, but we don't know what that information would look like, and B, we don't know what the cost would be. So it seems to me that given that we've got very strong recommendations, that throwing $200,000 at this, as the recommendation says, isn't going to make any difference to us developing a Canterbury biodiversity strategy. I'm with Councillor East in wanting to oppose this.
Yeah, I think you've probably heard enough from me on this matter today, but I am still unconvinced that there isn't some extra work that could go on here. I think I heard from Catherine that some extra science money would be helpful. And I still am yet to be convinced that the sort of policy analysis work that needs to be done is going to be done alongside the engagement process. And like, I think Ian's right. We're not debating here whether the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy needs to be revitalised or reviewed. Has to happen. And there's no debate that the engagement process and the collaboration process needs to happen. That's all good. My concern is about how we do that and what information and analysis is going to support that engagement process. Like I said, you can show up to the potluck with an empty plate, or you can show up to it with something. And I'm yet to be convinced that we've got that work in hand. And I asked those direct questions, sort of got answers, but I'm still unconvinced. So I really support providing some support to staff to get that extra work done so that it can work alongside the engagement process that we have to undertake in the next 6 months. And that will carry on until we've signed off a new strategy. I know that. So yeah, I do support this, and hopefully others will too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair. Look, I can't support this. I think three speakers, Easton and Mackenzie, have presented some of my thinking. For me, it's moving with haste and repenting at leisure. I just can't help but thinking that this feels like we're acting very impulsively or very much in a hurry, and we will probably live to regret it later, although Alex did think that putting stuff in and taking stuff out, there might have been a difference around how that they would deal with that. I am concerned that the mover of this talks about the recommendation being moved out of frustration, and as the mover was also the chair of ARF, that all we're asking is for 200,000. Actually, this is ratepayers' dollar. Every dollar actually counts here, so quite concerned about that. I think that it's been generally acknowledged, the value of the current Canterbury biodiversity strategy, and I know Councillor Edge in the past, certainly as a member of the Waimakariri Zone Committee, and since he sat on this council as well, has always been supportive of the content in the biodiversity strategy. For me, this is talking about basically a 6-month sort of hiatus, I guess, if you wanted to even call it that. But we've been told that staff are actually carrying on with developing their work program around revitalising this. So, and knowing that we currently have got some funding in our long-term plan that we're currently developing, I won't be able to support this today.
Okay, I'm going to take Councillor Karakia, and I think that we've had enough toing and froing on this, but there's some stuff that's coming out of this in terms of the comments that made that I would like to speak about. Actually, even before I go back to you, Councillor Edge and Councillor Burns. So, Councillor Karakia.
Kia ora, kai whakahaere. Look, listening to this discussion, this debate, in a lot of ways, everyone's right, because we all want to do as much as we can for the biodiversity and all of that. But I think the questions have been kind of answered as back to that, but I come back to our role as councillors and our fiduciary obligations actually to our ratepayers, and particularly because we are in a situation where it's imperative actually that we can defend rate rises. And when we're looking at this particular take, this particular subject, there's a couple of things that, because I've kind of gone back and forwards, because I know what the chair of our biodiversity committee is passionate about Papatūānga as well. Our other councillor there around the coastal areas and all of that. But at the end of the day, these are the things that have actually turned me back the other way. One is the fact is that with the new regime that we've got now in central government, there could be an actual push now to actually take away a lot of this whole strategy thing, and so we could be left where it's actually not possible to do it. So it's about change of policy, particularly from the Crown. The other part is that Alex did say that some of the technical work has already been done, whereas what we were hearing before is that, hey, we need more money. This part of it is because there's no technical work actually that's been done, but some of it has been done. The other part of it, again, though, is that I really believe that, again, it's about defending decisions as councillors. And this one, it's not going to alter the main kind of thrust of this thing. All it actually is that it's going to provide not the meal, Craig, but actually the dessert, the sugar on the top, which we actually can't afford. So I'm actually not going to vote in favour of this. Thank you.
Okay, so the thing I'm wondering about when I've listened to what's going on here is there's some words in this which don't recognise some of the commenters, and so revitalisation is there, and clearly if it's about revitalisation and engagement with stakeholders, clearly the staff advice is we don't need to do that. But Craig has, I think Craig's made a very good point in terms of, is this an opportunity to actually do that other stuff that he and Catherine may have talked about? So Craig, I'm just wondering what your thinking is on that, and whether, and after you've commented, whether we go back to Councillor Edge and Councillor Burns to see if there's a refocus of what we've got on the screen here. So,
thanks, Peter. I mean, one of my questions would be the idea of an issues and options paper to accompany the engagement process. Is that possible within the next 6 months? Because what we're looking for is some content to be produced, rather than all we've got at the moment. The only surety we have in this process is that we're going to have the discovery event. We're going to get a paper back in June about the process and how the strategy will be formulated, signed off, all that. But there's no content to support the engagement process. And so it's that content that I'm really searching for. And an issues and options paper is potentially one way to solve that. But my question to staff would be, is that possible with the current staffing capacity and the current funding that is in place? Or would you need extra resource to produce that report? And understand, or as I can ask a question at any time.
I've gone away from our process on this because we're in the debate process. But I think we've uncovered something here in the discussion that is probably, I mean, the optics, the councillors talk about the optics of this, and given that we've got an LTP process and that recognition is that, hey, we don't need all this cash. But I think there's a real good point that's been made by Councillor Pauling. Can we move this along in another way rather than just saying we need $200,000 to do it? And so therefore, Catherine, I guess we'll call you back. Well, I'm sorry too, but I'm the chairman here at the moment, Mr. Snowball.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order. At the very beginning of this process, we were very clear on the recommendation that came through and that there could be no alteration. And now you've changed your mind and we can't alter it here.
The advice has been given to me that we can do that. No, so that's the advice from governance, is that we can do that. I'm following that advice. Otherwise, I would have put this a long time ago. Now, if you're unhappy about that, we can have a break, and you can get that advice yourself.
I'd take the advice from staff, but I understood, so I must have. Sorry.
So an apology to you, councillor. I believe it may have been done outside of the council meeting. The original advice, which was not formally in the council meeting, was incorrect. It is actually that it can be amended here by virtue of this being a full council. So my apologies to you, councillor, and to the other councillors.
The ruling's there, so I've got no avenue to pursue.
All right. Are we going to do this? What do we want? Your point of clarity. Yep.
So we've just had a discussion on that one. Would not the amendment have come before we had the discussion?
Try and foreshadow what that may look like before we get there. We will have to go to that.
I'm not asking for an amendment yet. I'm asking a question to be answered to clarify whether there's a need to do that.
That's what we're
I mean, the process is 3.5 is to temporarily suspend the standing orders. And so we're currently in debate. So unless we've done that, and that needs to be moved and seconded and passed as a motion. Because it is quite confusing to go into debate and then suddenly we're asking staff questions again. And, yeah.
Follow the process. So what do you want to say about that? Okay. The seconder, thank you, Craig. All those in favour of that, please say aye. Okay. So the answer.
Alex and I've just been having a chat. I mean, it's very hard for staff to develop a work program on the fly. And so in terms of what an issues and options paper would look like, what it would involve, we'd need to have a think about that. So I think we were talking in the break, you know, I think what I'm hearing from councillors is that they want real evidence of progress being made. And I think staff have taken that away. We've heard that very clearly.
But that's not going to foreshadow any, you can't foreshadow any amendment to be made to the resolution. So thank you, Catherine, for that. So we'll go back to the item. Big pardon? I can see Councillor Edge online with his hand up, but I'm not ready to go to Councillor Edge online yet, actually. What I'm trying to establish here, if that's the recommendation that we put in front of us and we've debated it, I thought there was an opportunity because people said this isn't a revitalisation, and people said other things about this, whether we needed to make an amendment to that to reflect that debate. The answer to that is no. Come from Councillor Pauling, is no. Is there any further comment on this? You've already commented, councillor Mackenzie. You've already commented on this, councillor Sweet. Okay, Grant, you're the mover of this motion. We'll go back to you. Or go to councillor Burns first. Have you got anything more to say?
No, I must admit, I'm sitting here thinking, unless Grant does something, I think it's just, we need to just go to a vote. If it wins, it wins. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So be it.
Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it's disappointing from the sound of some of the comments that we're getting. The $200,000, not being flippant about the amount of money there. I'm more concerned that we didn't anticipate when we signed off on the annual plan, I said that before, that the biodiversity strategy was going to be pushed out again. It's 36 months on since we were supposed to start the process. And that's what's troubling to me. There's a reputational issue in that we are failing to deliver what we said we would deliver in 2021 at a time when we have a declaration of climate ecological emergency. We have climate change issues coming at us left, right and centre. And notwithstanding that, I think that is perfectly okay for us to recommend this. The money that we spend now, by bringing it forward a little bit, we can always sort of deal with that money in the long-term plan process. There was also comments about the fact that we have delayed this because of the delays to the NPS and Indigenous biodiversity. But item 18 on page 249 basically says that notwithstanding changes to the national direction that might even take place now, the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy is overdue for review, and there's no doubt about that. The original Biodiversity Strategy is a charter of agreement on the state of the environment in Canterbury and the direction, the goals, targets and actions that need to take place. And that's what that's all about. And I think that we do need to get on with this. And we do want some action. As Catherine's saying, I think we want to see some results and we want to see them sooner. I particularly would like to see them some action as suggested in January, February, ensuring that, and whether or not this money could be used for setting up a facilitator to actually help bring those people together and whoever else might be needed to be brought together. And I am aware too that the district councils, Waimakariri, I think Timaru perhaps, are getting underway with their biodiversity strategies. And you think, well, gosh, if we are the lead agency, why aren't we helping to coordinate this with people now? I think that's very disappointing, really. Well, look, that's about all I've got to say. I just think that it's the money will be useful, and I think that the use that it could be put to is already explained in the report about item 15A. Funding a consultant to coordinate and manage the process and give our staff a bit of helping hand, and in the gap analysis process, perhaps some of that money could be outsourced to find out what those gaps are in relation to the NBS Indigenous biodiversity, especially with issues related to landscape scale requirements to consider. Have we got that information? If we haven't, let's get on with it. And we might not have the staff in-house to do that. So anyway, that's my final comment, Chair. No, that's my final comment there, and we'll just take it to the vote.
Yeah, okay. So with that final comment here, the recommendation is in front of us here.
I call for a division. Thanks very much.
Councillor Burns has called for a division. Try.
If you can clearly say for, against, or abstained. Councillor Davies. Councillor Ward.
Are you online, Nick?
Yeah, I'm against.
Councillor Southwell.
Southwell, for.
Against.
Councillor Pauling.
For.
Councillor East. Councillor Edge.
For.
Councillor Mackay. Councillor Diche.
For.
Councillor Sunkel. Councillor Korako.
Oh. Thanks.
Councillor Cramwell.
Aye. For.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Chair Scott.
I'm against.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Against.
Councillor Burns.
For. It's 8-8. The motion falls.
Okay, so this is 8-8. So it means it fails because it supports staff position on this. And I would propose we leave this on the table. Okay, what's failed? Thank you. Let's move to the next item, which is 8.7, which is the chair's report. I'll take that as read. Is there any discussion on that? There's 3 points in there that were made, was the formation of the coalition government and engagement with ministers, which none of that has happened properly yet. There's the second item there, which is the new kaifakahare of Te Runga o Ngāi Tahu, which I think there'll be some comment from Councillor Korako about that. Local Government New Zealand special general meeting featured by local government. And so I'll speak to that for a start off. The recommendations went to local government, it was about 120 members maybe on Monday. All the items that were put before them passed. So that gives a mandate for Local Government New Zealand to now go forward and engage with the new local government minister, Simeon Brown, on not only on those issues, but actually opens the door to have that conversation, which is quite surprising actually to get the support it did. I think the lowest one, I know Patrick's not here, maybe it was 74% support. So it's a pretty strong mandate for Sam Broughton to move forward and do that. Happy to talk about that. Yan was involved in that, but couldn't get in to watch the voting, which was unfortunate. But yeah, that was pretty unanimous. Look, do you want to say something about kaifakahare?
Kia ora e kaifakahaere. Ko taku kōrero tēnei mō tō tātou kaifakahaere o Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu hau Justin Tipper, Ngāi Tahu Kāti Māmoe. Before I actually talk about our new kaifakahaere of Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu, I want to acknowledge the 3 previous kaifakahaere. The first one was Charles Crofts, who actually just celebrated his 80th birthday. The second one was Mark Solomon, and the third one was Lisa Tumahai. I want to also, so talking about Justin Tipper, I mean, he comes from a Rakatira whānau, Tipper whānau from Moiraki. And when we think of Moiraki, which is the southernmost Papatupa Runanga within the Koni Hero or Waitaha Takiwa. But it's important to note from that Papatupa Runanga came Matiaha Tira Morahu. And so on the 22nd of October, 1849, this rangatira was the one who lodged the first formal statement of Ngāi Tahu grievances that culminated into the Ngāi Tahu claim or Te Kareme. And then from that point in 1849, there were 7 generations that passed in 150 years of advocacy for the claim. So when we come to Justin Tipper and his whānau at Moiraki, I think first of all that Justin, he actually reflects a new kind of generation of leadership within Ngāi Tahu. Justin, in his early 40s, has been chair of Te Runanga o Moiraki since 2019, and he has a partner, Anna, and they have 4 sons that actually are living at Moiraki on the Papatupu. I think with Justin as well is that reflecting this new generation of leadership. Now these ones, and Justin in particular, is culturally astute and grounded in Ngāi Tahu tikanga and reo. He's been around our iwi for a long time and is not new to the tribal politics. Justin is well known amongst our people. He's business savvy and he leads that generation of young ones. And they were actually, the training of them started actually right back over 20 odd years ago. And now we are seeing the fruits of that in Justin Tipper as our 4th kaiwhakahaere. Finally, Justin's commitments to his people is pretty much around unity and focus on Ngāi Tahu whānui aspirations. The other ones, he continues in that journey of revitalising our reo. One of the big things for Justin is that authentic relationships with tangata tiriti amongst hapu, iwi and rōpū Māori. The last 2 was genuine partnerships between local government and central government. And the other one was that more equitable crown funding to the regions within the Ngāi Tahu rohe. So, kaiwhakahaere or the Konihere o Waitaha, I really did want to just put that there as to who this new rangatira of Ngāi Tahu actually is as our new kaiwhakahaere. Kia ora, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to do that as a Ngāi Tahu councillor, supported by my other Ngāi Tahu councillor, Jane Cramwell. Kia ora.
It's total ngā kupu utauniku. Yeah, I mean, just support what Nock said about Justin. Yeah, it is a new kind of way of leadership, going from Lisa to Justin, as Nock's already said, very schooled in tikanga and kawa of Ngāi Tahu, and it will be a different presence when Ngāi Tahu do go up to the North Island and to the Iwi Leaders Forum, having Justin on the table, and then also having someone from further down south from Canterbury, from Moiraki. Hopefully that'll strengthen our relationship with Environment Canterbury, having Justin as kaiwhakahaere, because he will be spending a lot of time in Christchurch, and maybe that'll give us an opportunity to spend more time with him. Kia ora.
Can I just just to one more supplementary point about this is that we talked about Justin leading a new generation or reflecting a new generation. We have 3 in this room here: Jane Cramwell, Craig Pauling, and then also David O'Connor, Penanata O'Connor. So I just want to acknowledge that too, that they are within this council as well. David Penanara O'Connell. Good. Oh, I might. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, kia ora, I will say something. I've known Justin now. In fact, he was the Te Reo teacher when I previously worked for Environment Canterbury. It could be 15 years ago. And as my colleagues have already said, he will definitely offer something new and vibrant to the table, and also that face, I think. You talk about the iwi Leaders Forum. I know he will be anything but out of place in that particular type of area. So certainly as he tangata or te tiriti aho, I'm very happy to hear that. So kia ora, thank you for the opportunity.
Can I speak to something different? Or were we just talking about Justin? I'll just jump in.
Sorry, Neil. Yeah, I'll just acknowledge, like Justin actually spoke on my behalf when I got elected onto council when we had our forfeiture here. So I just want to acknowledge his support for me then. And yeah, I really look forward to his leadership. I did send him a message and congratulate him on the day it happened over on the Taipotini. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what he's going to bring to the leadership of the iwi. And it is great to have someone from our generation coming through to lead. So yeah, wish him all the best.
Yeah, I'm sure Justin will be good. I've got just a very young relationship with Justin, but I'm hugely impressed with him in terms of his mana and how he holds himself and the council that he takes on board. His understanding of the people that he is now leading is pretty deep. So I think we're really lucky. We're really lucky for someone that is accessible. I said to him, look, I'll catch up with you at Christmas time. Then Nook's going, just ring him now. So that's good to know that that Justin's only a phone call away, and look forward to meeting with him. So yes, Dion.
I just wanted to just to update the council on last week. I spent a couple of days up at Waitangi for young elected members conference with local government New Zealand, and it was really it's actually probably one of the more humbling kind of things to do, actually, to spend a couple of days just chilling out at Waitangi. Well, we weren't chilling out, but in our free time, we're just literally playing cricket on the grounds of Waitangi. I mean, I've been there in my past life in parade for Waitangi Day, but we had some really good speakers talking to us. Dame Jenny Shipley came and spoke to us, and a couple of other significant people. Good group of people. We weren't really talking about politics as such. It was actually more focused on what we can do as local government and how local government is going to sort of take a bit more of a leadership role in our communities in this sort of certain time. And it was quite heartening. I got to speak to and connect with a number of the other young elected members from different regional councils. And there's a lot of language change around what regional council can do. A lot of people talking about regional government rather than regional councils as such, and how we can become a bit more of a glue in this uncertain time around what's going on. So there's some really interesting conversations taking place. Yeah, if you've got any other questions around it, you can always let me know. And also noted just in your report, Peter, point number 25, that you don't intend on doing anything until the first meeting of 2024. So if you want to let me know, I'm not doing anything for Christmas, so or New Year's actually. So let me know if you want me to do it for you.
I think just before we go into public exclude, it's an opportunity just to thank everyone. I sent you an email and I've thanked you for your process during the year. I think it's been really good. I really appreciate the fact that we've grown reasonably good at this stuff, and I know that my colleagues now are doing points of order and checking me up on standing orders, and especially from those young guys, it's really good. I think you need to go and just relax, because I think next year is going to be pretty interesting with us. We've got the we've got the long-term plan to get through, and that's going to be an interesting process. And we've got some the regional land transport plan and the public transport plan and those sorts of things to do too. So I think you should give yourself a pat on the back. And I'm pretty happy with where we're at. Staff, and thank you very much. And Kathleen's off to the UK. She's already in the plane. I don't know if your head's not the building anymore, is it? And I don't know, Craig, if you want to say anything in terms of just signing out, but we will go into PX after this, and then I don't think we need to come back. We can go to public, and then we'll go into open, and then we can. Yeah, I will. I'll get to that. Yeah.
Just to take for what you've said, just thank everybody, all the staff and all the councillors for, what's been a really great year. Like Peter said, enjoy your break and spend time with your family and your friends, and be safe, and come back ready for 2024, which like Peter said will be an interesting one, and we've got our LTP to complete, so looking forward to that. Thank you.
Right, so let's just, I'll move that, and John seconded it. So all those in favour of that, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Now the next bit we need to do is to go into public excluded, the recommendation on page 300. I could have someone move that we're going to public excluded, please thank Craig, and seconded by John. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Right, let's go. We're right. So we just we've come back out of public excluded. Just to note that we have an opportunity to for you to buy your own drinks, but have some food provided at Moi Moi from 3 o'clock on. Nuka and I have got Tamari and Tania at 3. Tomorrow at 3 and Tania at 4. So I don't know if I'll be there, but if you're still there, I'll come pick you up. So the next meeting. Who said that? Yeah. Jesus. I thought you said you were, I didn't realise that you were Dutch. 14th, next meeting, 14th of February, 2023. And I now declare the meeting closed, and I would invite Councillor Robinson to finish with a karakia.
I hope this one makes sense. Kia tau nā mana ki tanga, a te mea naro. Kia ronga, kia tina o tātou. Kia mahie, te hua, make hikihi, kia toi te kopo, kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reia mare, mori, kia tuturu, kia whakamaua, kia tina, koe hea, take e.